Okay, here we go.
Test, 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 test.
Roll music?
Let's roll it.
Welcome to the Unknown Morning Show.
It's the show where we explore radio,
Podcasting,
TV,
gear,
gearheads,
and making money with a hot mic and other stuff too.
This is the Unknown Morning Show.
I'm Mandee Montana.
And I'm Chuck McKinley.
What about you, Chuck? You all good?
Yeah, everybody's fine. We're adjusted. We've learned a new phrase today, which is coffee drop. You know, here on the Unknown Morning Show, there's a reason why it could be unknown. And we're at Mandy's place. Hi, Mandy.
Hi, Chuck.
Kenny Smith is with us. Hi, Kenny.
I feel like we need a round of applause.
Good morning, y'all.
Thank
you for that.
We've
You're
actually,
welcome.
yeah. Well, I'd say, well, let's pause and I'll put in applause because I actually have that in my sound.
Do you have sound
I
effects?
have that in my sound
So
effects
let's
back
pause.
home. Okay.
Insert applause.
And we're talking again.
We've
And we
been-
get paid for this? Actually, well, if there's such a thing as coffee currency, yes, there is. I guess, Kenny, I've known you for about 30 years now. And one of the things that I find interesting, and like a lot of us that have used a microphone to make bucks,
Yeah.
we've all transitioned and to do other things. And I was looking at your Facebook post about, onthecall.net, 5th season, right?
Yes, sir.
With the Lindale
For
Eagles.
Lindale, yeah.
Are you correct? You got to correct me if I'm wrong. I think you do van baseball,
Softball.
softball.
Picked them up this past year, yeah.
So let's see. Are you doing basketball? Any basketball?
There's a possibility that I'm working, but I guess before we get started, y'all, I love you guys for the invitation and for asking me to sit down here and talk about this because,
Well, we love you.
well, with the history behind not only our relationship, but with, some of the other people you guys have already talked to, it's incredibly refreshing to reach back, and especially with some of the guests you guys have already had, with getting people, allowing people to talk about those things that, that are kind of worth, not rehashing is not really a good word, but to bring back some of the
Memories.
yeah, some of the classic stuff that so many of us miss, but it's kind of gotten swept under the rug a little bit as far as the evolvement of our profession, of what we once thought it was, and which we were all a part of at one time, and
I
now
remember
it's
things
really
differently,
has
too.
evolved into where
Yeah.
it's a lost art and it's gone now. So
Oh yeah. Well,
everything's different.
look, I made no bones about it when you were released by 96X. I was angry because I loved you when you did Afternoons
appreciate
in
that,
96. It
Man,
reminded
you
me.
sounded good.
God, it reminded me of somebody who was sitting there.
Thanks, sweetie.
You're maybe having a bubbly, whatever you're having, and
It was coffee.
just
It was
coffee.
coffee.
You're just sitting back talking about Led Zeppelin, but you did it in such a way that it was very organic. And I'll never forget the next weekend. It was next weekend. I was driving around town with the dog, and I hear somebody on there that's just like screaming. And I'm going, no, 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 no. And of course, my dog was like, what? What's going on, Dad?
Your
no,
dog.
it's not Kenny. But of course, let's face it. They didn't look at it as talent. It's like you were this line that represented X amount of dollars in New York. It's like when I was cut from KKUS. It wasn't the fact that, KKUS was the best country station in the chain here at the time. It was, people are going to be moved. We're going to move this guy because, I'm a big believer, though, on any type of exit. You never tell anybody anything negative because you may need them the next day.
Sure.
And in that case, it was like I told Ginger when she fired me, I said, this is going to take a while to move. I had like 10 years of stuff. And
Oh, man, we did. Our office was decorated.
I was moving until 3. True thing. So I have this plant that is about as big as Mandy's desk. And of course,
It wasn't quite that big.
it was huge. But it was one of those like wicker things on meth that was really big. And the only reason it survived is because she watered it. That's it. Boss, I water it, whatever
This is
you want to
coming
do.
back to me now.
And so
I remember this darn piece of furniture
and
y'all had in
and
there.
I'm taking it out, and it's not going to fit in my truck, so I throw it, right? So when I
You
said
threw
that
away
to
my
Rosanna,
plant that I watered.
when I said that to Rosanna, she didn't have a real good reaction. I was like,
I'm sure
I got
she
fired.
didn't.
I got fired, honey. Oh, she didn't like that at all. Hey, I was thinking about things now, and I'll let you get back. You voice tracked for me on KKUS, didn't you?
Yeah, nice.
Yes.
Okay, I sat there. I was reworking bits in my head as I was looking over,
I have the
KTYL.
KKUS family portraits still that Michael Cavazos took back in the day for us. They were fantastic.
Is
Great.
that the one that's in Tom Perryman's book? The one in the very back?
I think it might be.
Oh, I want to see
Everyone
that.
looks like they're KKUS employees except for Kenny over there in his golf vest over in the side.
Wait a minute.
Right side.
Wait a minute. Is this
Looked like I
where-
was going to an
Is
interview or
this the
something?
beige vest
No,
thing?
not the beige vest. We were at Bergfeld Park. Tom's sitting in the middle of all of us with his big cowboy hat. We're all kind of positioned around in like a family portrait. It's great.
There's the other one that I think maybe you sent me. No,
Oh, that's you and Bob and Amy,
Amy.
in the beige vest. Yeah.
Yes, and the joke was,
I have signed copies of those.
Yeah, if there's an.
Rod found them and gave them to me. They're in
my God.
they're in my file cabinet.
We were like, you know what? I mean, we could transition to Walmart just like that.
Amen.
We're a little all over the place, but it's the ADD broadcast today.
We're kind of floating all over the place. Hey, where do you want to go with this conversation?
Well, I'm going to, first of all, go back because you keep bringing things up. And I know we get in these discussions all the time when we start talking about something that brings back a memory is we bounce around because one thing spurs another, one thing triggers another. But the first time you contacted me when I was doing classic rock at that time, and first of all, it's always an incredible compliment anytime your peers obviously reach out to you and say, man, I'm really enjoying this.
Yeah.
So you two have always been two of those people that basically made me a lot better, was hearing the positive input you guys always had. And you always had it anyway.
It's true, though. It's absolutely
totally
true.
true.
But the story that spurred, I think, your call, if I remember correctly, was I'd just come out of Dude Looks Like a Lady by Aerosmith. And anytime I played Aerosmith, now doing classic rock for a while, I was never a big Aerosmith fan. But I left my dog, my girlfriend, and all my friends in Huntsville when I was going to Sam Houston State to take a job at the Ascutney Mountain Ski Resort back in 1985.
Sounds like a great country song. I'm sorry.
Absolutely. So
Or a great 80s movie. I'm not sure. Maybe
it got
both.
going for me, and then I made a stupid decision.
Lifetime stuff.
Well, I
What
took
a
a job
mashup.
at this place in Vermont where Charles Bronson and Jill Ireland had a home, and Steven Tyler and Joe Perry both frequented this ski resort because they had a 5-star restaurant in the main lodge. And I got a chance to meet Steven Tyler and Joe Perry one night because our concierge was not feeling well that day, and I was the bar manager at the time, so I took care of the door. So they come in dressed exactly like we all remember them in our heads. Long hair, crap, hanging from their heads, and they looked like they just walked off the stage. And incredibly grateful, gracious, blessed men.
Oh, how nice to hear.
And they
That's
tipped-
refreshing.
I've heard that about
They
them.
tipped everybody. They did
Wow.
not want a private table. They complimented everyone. They always had a great. They came in because they loved the food. Well, when they would get done eating, they would literally walk in the kitchen and go through to the sous chef, the executive chef, and give them money and just tell them that we really enjoyed our meal. They were just
Wow.
incredibly gracious people. But I wasn't a great fan of their music. But I come out of, going back to studio, I come out of Dude Looks Like a Lady. I had just read up about the song. They were doing a show in big town, Detroit, Chicago, somewhere. They had 2 nights between their double shows. They went to a club. They made a pact within themselves. Who's going to pick up the first girl?
Okay.
Okay. We're going to pick out a girl when we walk in this place. And the first one that gets her attention, they both walk through the door and they look to the bar. And the bar, there's guys and girls at the bar. And then there's a couple of girls standing at the far left side of the bar. Long brunette hair, gorgeous, tight leather pants. And they both went, all right, let's go at it. And they walk up to the corner of the bar, and it's Vince Neil from Motley Crue.
So the dude looked like a lady?
So that was the inspiration for them to write Dude Looks Like a Lady.
My.
So,
That's hilarious. Oh, Kenny, that's a great story.
It's on, Song Facts, which is probably the best resource for, the building of music and the most trusted network of how to figure out, the origin of songs.
I didn't know that existed. How was I on the air for 20 years and didn't know about Song Facts
I didn't
until
either.
now?
I didn't either. And I think one day I was tired of trying to figure out who had the real stories. So, but I remember, I think it was that afternoon when you sent me a text and said, "Oh man, I really enjoy listening to you and your stories behind so and so." And I'm like, man, I'm just reading off information I get.
But the thing that I think is interesting to me, I never listened to. Okay, you know how this is when you hear a jock on the air and you have the. Okay, this is good. It's like, shut up. I never got that with you. It was like, oh, this is good. This is interesting. You do what you do, hit the money spot, 96X, boom, hit the commercials.
I appreciate that, man.
And I never had that. I never had that feeling with you at all. But
he's never given me that compliment.
You are lying.
I'm just kidding.
Taylor Swift.
No.
Taylor Swift.
No, I'm teasing.
Taylor Swift.
I know. I'm teasing. I'm just saying you've never told me that you've never had to yell "shut up" at the radio. I feel like there were times when I worked for you where you were probably like, "Okay, it's time. Okay, let's wrap up that thought." But no, you gave me an incredible compliment. Listening over the years, when we didn't work together, you would text me. You're like, "Man, that was a solid break." I
still remember the Taylor Swift song "Style." I was driving home one night. It was between 6 and 7, and I think it's maybe a 9-second intro. And you're saying something about the new James Bond movie and like a full review at 93.1 or Mix 93, blah, blah, blah. Hits the post hard, does it. And I'm like, that's my girl. Good.
I think Style had like maybe a 20-second intro. So I actually was able to add a couple of thoughts to it.
Well, and I love that song. To me,
it's a great song.
That particular song to me is a perfect pop song. It has the beat, the rhythm within the lyrics are just, it's even like now I'll hear things. And I'm not a huge, we were talking bro country with Brian, for instance.
Yeah.
I'm not a bro country fan where it's, we're drinking warm red wine in our pickup truck with my blonde girlfriend named Irene.
It's hard enough looking at you when you say the words bro country. Knowing how unnatural that is.
But there's a song now, Luke Combs, Ain't No Lovin' Oklahoma.
Yeah.
Oh gosh, I was discovering that.
I don't think of him as bro country though.
I don't, and I don't know anything about him much. I know he did Fast Cars.
Yeah.
But when I heard that it's, I have these music director moments where I'll hear the first 10 seconds. I go, hit, that's a hit, which is I miss music directing meetings because like Amy and I would sit down, Amy Austin, and we'd have 2 piles of music. Brooks and Dunn, Reba, stuff you listen to and you just rubber stamp it. It's here and it's just the rotation. And then things that, they're going to have to work for it, but you say, let's find the undiscovered stuff here. Let's find the hit. Do we have one? Or is it something we don't like, And, I always figured when Nashville or Dallas came calling, had to give them an honest answer at least. Yes, no, or, we love it or, and at those times, I was doing things like kind of rough in-store research. Like I'd send worksheets to Tyler, Longview, Athens record stores, and they'd get tickets every once in a while. And I would say, just give me some rough estimates because I'd look for trends in that off the request sheets. And then it was always a good way with consultants in the house to say, look, we know what we're doing. Thank you. It helped a little bit. But
I didn't mean to give that a left turn. Sorry.
No, I
wasn't really fishing for compliments either.
You're driving the boat.
I kind of left her to myself somewhere. I think we're right now landing in Mineola. Is that? I don't know if that's a segue or not, but yeah, you were talking about stories in the early years and et cetera. So going back to you.
Well, going back to the very beginning. Bringing back a Scutney Mountain ski resort for some reason, the longest I've ever talked about Vermont. But it was before I left to go to Vermont that I was a club jock for a long time.
about this.
Yeah.
You liked new wave.
And we did New Wave night
Yeah.
at school. Yeah, back when New Wave began. So,
Yeah, the good stuff.
yeah, it was a little weird, but
Everybody's feeling old except one person.
Stop it.
Well, there was a guy named Craig Chambers, and Craig was the PD at KHUN and KSAM in Huntsville.
Okay.
And Craig would frequent the Prickly Pear, which was the club in the Holiday Inn.
That's an awesome name.
And,
What a name.
Oh, yeah, at the Holiday Inn in Huntsville. And Craig came up to the booth one night, and he said, "Man, have you ever thought about doing, radio?" And I'm like, no, I'm a club jock, and no. He said, "Well, if you need some part-time work, I need a couple part-timers." Anyway, I took the job in the Scutney when it obvious was Texas people don't need to live in New England.
Yes.
Yeah.
4 months into that, I packed my crap and I came back home, and I looked him up for a job, and Craig put me on the air, which was the first mistake. But like anybody that gets into radio or got into, and this was years after you had already started, but
Sure.
this was my first shift was Christmas Eve of 1986.
Playing the hits, huh?
Yeah. It was 6 to midnight Christmas Eve, because obviously all the full timers
Yeah.
were off doing Christmas.
Were you doing full blown Christmas music right then?
No.
You
No.
weren't.
No, KHUN at the time was AC, and we stayed AC. KSAM played some country Christmas music at
You were
the time.
kind of like, let them do it. We're the alternative, right?
Exactly.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it was 6 to midnight Christmas Eve. I went home and took a nap, and I came back and did 6 a.m. to noon Christmas Day, and then midnight to 6 that night. But it was, it was 18 hours in a matter of 2 days.
Done it. I know what you mean. Yeah.
Yeah. When you get
you're the
back when you
part-timer.
got started, that's kind of how it worked. But it was the classic part about it was I worked at the same radio station Dan Rather actually started at.
Really?
Oh.
Because a lot of people forget Dan was a Sam Houston State Bearcat.
That's right.
Yeah. So he started at KSAM when it was just KSAM before the FM came on. But he used to climb the tower behind the
Rather?
building and plug in the transmitter.
What?
What?
Yeah.
I don't understand.
It was back when the antenna and the transmitter, you only had one antenna back then, and the stories, and there's documentation there at the radio, or was back in, the mid 80s.
But why would you have to unplug things? I don't get that.
Well, I don't know, Chuck.
Is that how they changed patterns
I
in
was
the old
not
days?
around in the 50s or 60s, man, so
I mean,
I don't know.
back, now we just
Wow.
press a button.
Sure. Well, this was obviously back way before those days, but
What if you had to do that during a thunderstorm?
I don't know.
Oh man,
You put a raincoat on.
do you have something else with
Put
this
those
coffee
special
I can
gloves
use? I'm
on
nervous
or
thinking
something.
about it.
And, yeah.
Rubber glove. Well, you have to have rubber gloves over boots.
Well, it's for training. I'm sure back then you got tased, so you could, you could understand this might happen. So we just want
man.
your body to get used to it before it actually happens. But
I'm not going to make the joke I could make. I'm just
No.
not going
How
there.
long were you at KSAM?
I was there for almost 2 years.
So, I mean, were you always okay? You were doing weekends. Did you progress like nights, overnights?
I can go back to 1987. One of the most devastating tornadoes came through West Texas. There was a tiny little town, 2 tiny towns that were mostly Hispanic population. One was called Balmorhea and one was Saragossa. And the tornado that came through West Texas, and this would have been, I think, Memorial Day weekend because campus was almost empty. I was on the air doing overnights the night the storm went through. The following couple of days, they were assessing storm damage. Now, this obviously was back in this would have been back in 1987. So when you saw storm damage was any local news helicopter that just flew over the area. What had happened is they actually had 2 tornadoes that met over Saragossa
Oh, my.
and literally what they
Combined?
call, they discount each other. They met in the middle of the town, basically wiped out the whole town. I think the city was Saragossa was only like 4 city blocks.
Oh, my.
It was about 90%, 95% Hispanic. There was a school and a church in one building. And unfortunately, that's where all the children were. So the church collapsed on the kid. It was obviously a devastating time for the entire state because it happened in a tiny area and it basically destroyed the whole town. That is significant in the point that it brings all three of us back to pretty much part of the origin of why you guys are here and why we're all talking about the old days in radio, because so much of what all three of us did in this job was based around how we could be of service to the public.
Yeah.
Sure.
How we could utilize our so-called prestigious jobs into helping other people promote their events, bring awareness to whatever they're doing, basically stuff that you're doing on a daily basis now, which is promoting health and how to help yourself become
Kenny,
greater.
Thank you. That's kind.
So the whole thing with Saragossa was significant because I went to my general manager at the time, and y'all are probably going to remember the name Clint Formby.
Yes.
Clint Formby
Yeah.
owned a ton of radio stations, and he was part of TAB, basically the start of TAB a long time ago, Texas Association of Broadcasters. And Clint owned our station. And I went to our general manager at the time and said, can we do something to help these people? Can we go on the air and take donations? And the GM basically said, listen, there's nobody in town. The college is on break for Memorial Day weekend or something. But Craig said it was okay with him. So I just literally went on the air and just said, hey, the town's gone. We're trying to collect clothes, building materials, anything you have to help rebuild this town. Well, it snowballed in like a matter of hours.
Wow.
To where we had people, and the KSAM K2 studios are still in the same building right off I-45.
Wow.
In Huntsville. So to get to the building, there's only places to park about 5 cars. And we had lines of people on the access road trying to drop off clothes. And all of a sudden, Kenny's in trouble because we have nobody there to man any of this stuff. They started unloading everything in the yard and in an empty building we had in the back. Anyway, so basically in a span of 3 days, we had filled up 2 tractor trailer loads full of clothes, boxed food supplies, lumber, concrete. We had the concrete company, man named Jerry Wagner, who owned a trucking company in town, who had lived through a tornado, called and said, hey, I'm going to deliver this stuff. I'm going to give you both my 18-wheelers, and we're going to drag all whatever you collect, we're going to take it to them.
Wow. Kenny, I've got chills everywhere because what you're describing doesn't happen anymore. But I've seen it happen in my time in radio. I know, Chuck, you and I saw it happen a few times. We had tornadoes roll through East Texas. Yeah. Kenny, you were a part of it too, where we would collect stuff at radio stations. But this is such a powerful story, an example of one person says, what can I do to help? I'm going to cry.
Impact.
Because then other community people say, oh, wait, somebody took the initiative. I don't know.
I'm okay with following.
I'm okay with following. Yeah. Thank you for doing that.
Yeah. Well, in a couple of days, we filled up 2 rock haulers. Wow. Which, for those that don't know, they're the open top. Filled them up with supplies. The guy that ran the concrete company named Danny, and I think his last name was Rice, but Danny owned the concrete company. He and Jerry were best friends. Danny paid for all the fuel, paid for our food, paid for everything, gave us a pallet of concrete. Anyway, so we took the 13-hour drive from Huntsville to Saragossa, which is almost to the far west tip. You know, we might as well have been driving to El Paso.
Okay.
Anyway, drove there. I was on the I got to ride in the truck with side story. Tommy Tomlinson was a firefighter in Huntsville at the time. Tommy Tomlinson was in the middle of training, wanted to train for emergency services. He was one of the first to kind of be involved with starting firefighters in helping communities assess tornado situations that came through, which obviously, thank God we had them when tornado went through Canton, went through Van, all that stuff. Well, Tommy was working in Huntsville, and the local Dodge dealership donated us a truck to drive ourselves to Saragossa. Tommy Tomlinson works his way back into this whole story because this happened in 1987. We did an amazing thing there. We were the first community, and it was Huntsville. We got there before Dallas. We got there right after the Red Cross. We got there before Houston TV stations.
Wow.
So it really worked out as a really godly thing that just got dumped on me and then everybody in Huntsville that reacted. Give everybody an opportunity to make a difference, make an impact.
Yeah.
We get there and we unload everything out of these trucks. The 18-wheelers take off, and then I'm able to talk to the Red Cross people there. We did the whole thing that you've done hundreds of times, and you and I never got a chance to do, but we made a phone call back to the radio station.
Sure.
And we're on the phone, and we're talking back then. Well, about the time I'm on the phone doing the break back at KHUN, the governor drives up with his entourage.
Oh.
And the sheriff of Balmarea County, who had to climb the water tower and watch these tornadoes because he's on a two-way radio trying to alert everybody about what's going on.
He's on a
back then.
tower
He's on a water tower.
with a two-way.
With a two-way.
Watching tornadoes?
He's
Why?
well away from it because it was his job and it was the only way that they could alert his
the National Weather
officers,
Service and all of that.
everybody about what was going on. So the sheriff of Balmarea met the governor at the car, and nowadays he would have been tackled and cuffed by Secret Service. He got in the governor's face, and I'm thinking back at that time, I think it was Mark White, and got all up in his business and said, "It's been 3 days. 2 trucks got here from Huntsville before you drove here." Ooh. And so he got right on him.
Wow.
Anyway, he was the one that told us the whole story about Saragossa. That spearheaded into my boss turned around and offered me a full-time job.
Yeah.
And obviously, that was great, and I appreciated it, but I needed to move on at the time. I ended up in a weekend trip home. Was headed down I-45. There's a car pulled over to the side of the road. Well,
And home is Plano, right?
home is Plano. So I'm heading north on I-45, and there's a Lincoln Continental pulled over the side of the road. Well, it's the exact same car that my mom drives at the time. So I noticed it, but it was really goofy because there's an old Ford truck pulled up in front of the car. There's a guy leaned into the driver's seat, and there's a guy standing at the front of the car. And I'm like, this doesn't
look right.
No, it was just a little weird. So I pulled over and I backed up towards the Ford truck, and the 2 guys leave the car. They go get in the Ford truck and they drive off. So I walked up to the car, and by that time, the woman, who was an elderly woman, she's obviously struck with fear. The guys were trying to rob them.
Whoa.
Oh, Kenny.
They were broke down. They pulled to the side of the road, and these guys pulled up and asked them if they needed help. And
we're going to take advantage of them.
yeah, so when I pulled up, obviously all it did was
Scare her.
and scared them, and they just got in their truck and drove off. So it wasn't anything more than me just driving, just pulling over and going, Hey, I wonder what's going on. Well, the guy ended up being Bill Keene, who at the time was the general manager at K-Love in Dallas. So at that time, I told him what I was doing and where I was going. And he said, well, why don't you bring your tape and your resume up and let's go over it.
What?
So a couple of weeks go by. I moved back from Huntsville, and I drive to Dallas, nervous as all get out.
Yeah.
With my little stupid, 12 brakes. And what do we have to do? 2 minutes?
2 minutes.
Had to be 2
Something?
minutes
It
or
was
less.
usually 2.5 minutes and 2:30s.
Yeah. Yeah, and a couple of commercials.
Yeah.
I had like one commercial, and I made it up like on campus.
Enough to give you contrast.
Yeah, and I went to this big radio station and sat in this waiting room with all these gold records. I mean, it was the whole thing you imagine, waiting to talk to this guy. And I'm nervous, so I'll get out. But he brings me in his office. He sets me down in front of him. He turns around. He puts my cassette in the radio behind him. And at this time, I'm like, I really should just walk out of here. This is going to be embarrassing. But he went through my air check. He listened to 4 breaks. He popped the tape out. He leaned it back and told it to me. And he said, listen, you got a lot of energy. You'd sound you'd sound good on a top 40 station, but you need some work. Go to the library. Where are you living? I said, well, I'm in Fort Worth with my mom. Go to the library, pull out the TAB book.
Okay.
That you used to be able to find where it had a listing of all the radio stations in the state.
Yes.
And go through, find 20 small market radio stations around the state. Send them a copy of your resume and your tape. You might get 2 phone calls. You might get 2 responses. Don't get discouraged, but that's what you need to do. You need to spend 5 years at a small market radio station and hone your craft, because you're not going to be a jock today.
Yeah.
It's going to take 5 years. And
what great advice.
It was
and that he took the
crazy.
time.
It was
Wow.
a crazy amount of circumstances. And I know as long as we've known each other, this is the only avenue I've ever had to, tell the
Isn't that
story.
wonderful
It's
to
a
have
great
that
story.
situation happen?
Well, it's great to have, obviously, this vehicle with you guys doing what you do, which is what y'all been doing since I've known you, which is just talk about life and stuff around you and how you're going to cope with it. But
We've all had those things. I had a mentor, Pat Martin. I'd been in radio about 3 years in Minnesota, and I was listening to myself and I was thinking I'm ready to move on. I listened to myself and I go, you're not. And so I hadn't been air checking. So I was air checking over and over and over. And then I was sending tapes out, but I would sit there and I would call stations, and, there was the big, I don't know, I think it was the NAB book, the big national book.
NAB book.
Okay.
Yes.
So I would sit there
They had
and
it down into states.
Yes.
That's what it was.
And so I would look for program directors, but I would also call ahead and I would verify who the PD would be. And sometimes I would just call and ask for them and strike up a conversation, because I would say, do you take tapes and resumes on a regular basis? And if they said no, they don't, why? But there was a person named Pat Martin who was at Stevens Point, WSPT and WXYQ. One was top 40, SPT was top 40, XYQ was country, and he was nationally known as this guy who could sit there and take young talent and develop it. And when I mean develop talent from Stevens Point to Rockford, Illinois, then they'd end up in Chicago, guys like Chris Schiebel.
Wow.
And so I sent Pat a tape, and he calls me and he says, kind of the conversation there, he goes, you've got things to work with. I don't have an opening now, but I'll call you when I do. Me and my newsman friend Dan Conrad were juiced for about 2 days over that one. And then he calls 2 months later and he goes, I'm moving to Milwaukee to WBCS. They have an opening for overnights. Send Terrell Matheny a tape and your resume. I ended up moving to Milwaukee.
Look at that.
I moved for $800 a month.
Yeah.
And you know what? I didn't even think about it. It was, and I always tell friends that, you get there, and I'm listening to like WOKY, which was the King AM rocker, kind of the K-Doc, right? There's Bob Berry in the mornings, WZMF, the birthplace of progressive rock and roll, maybe nationally, in Menominee Falls, kind of the Lindale of Milwaukee, Bob Reitman in the morning. And then you hear the Chicago, I could get WLS at night, but you'd hear all of these sounds and these jocks. And I go, oh God, I'm toast. I just thought, but it felt like being in the Valley of the Gods.
Yeah.
And I have to get you pictures, man. There's pictures.
I would love to see these pictures.
There's some pictures when I'll never forget. It's I was interviewed by the Milwaukee Journal because the whole story was I'd been in town like 6 months and I was number one at nights. The station was number one, to be fair about it, but I had an 8 share at nights. And there's a picture with white background, and it's like hairs down to my shoulders, got the foo and everything. But the story behind the picture is, as you back up, I'm standing in a snowdrift. But yeah, that's my story. And when I think about it now, I was living in a rooming house. My Saturday night was I'd watch SCTV, Saturday Night Live. I'd get a sub from Subway and a quart of Coke, and I was the happiest guy around. Why? I jumped from Austin to Milwaukee. I was there for a little under 4 years, but I was happy and challenging. It was crazy. Well, I was crazy at the time.
Yeah, that's a quarter of Coca-Cola for you children back there.
Yes. Yeah.
I just realized how
yes.
that came across.
No. That
come
was
on,
something.
Chuck.
That was something at the time that
A quart of Coke.
Yeah,
That's
Come
where
on,
the
you
Fu
were
Manchu came from.
You
know,
were
Tony?
dicing it up on the mirror, weren't you?
I was never.
Had your razor blade. I'm teasing. I'm teasing. You do
I
not.
was never that guy. I couldn't
with a
smoke,
pint.
and I couldn't smoke,
Just graduated to the.
and I couldn't smoke either.
Yeah.
I ended up shock therapy. I was at a place called Mettler's Bar in Mankato, Minnesota. I've been in radio
Did you just
about.
say shock therapy? Are you being for real?
No, absolutely yes. I was in
When I brought up the taser thing, obviously that was a joke.
Mettler's Bar
Brought back bad
in
memories.
Mankato. I'm 20 years old, and I'm trying to be like my version of Rico Suave, which is I was smoking a Swisher Sweet cigar, and I put it in backwards.
Oh.
And so 20-year-old Chuck at the time. My rationale was, hey, nobody burns themselves on a can of beer. I quit smoking. And who says your lizard brain doesn't work?
Put it in back.
Yeah. But
The flame didn't throw you off at all. The burning part, the big orange ball.
But behind all that, I was a little. I think about myself. I was a little too wild. I was way too crazy. And you have it to where, you have a number of. By the time I actually could do other things, which is like program back in, 2006, it gave me really an appreciation for actually being an adult too.
You know what?
And dealing with people.
And you gave me such great advice during those days because I was nowhere near
Get
as
out of my
wild.
studio.
Well, no, that was a different
I know.
day. But at that time when you were programming in 2006, I was probably about the same age that you were when you were doing all those wild
Yeah.
and crazy things.
Yeah.
Granted, I'm a female, so I might not have been as wild and crazy as Chuck. I really probably wasn't as wild and crazy as Chuck, but I was dating some random, I think you called them the South Tyler Snots.
Yes.
Is what you called them.
I probably was too pronounced in my thoughts at the time, but
No. I'm telling you how much I appreciated and was grateful for the advice that you gave because you're not my parent.
no,
Yeah.
I'm not.
You're not my father,
I'm not.
but you were a friend that had a lot more wisdom and you probably knew what those boys were thinking.
Well,
Right.
Mandy Montana was also in a place in her life where she was looking for help and direction into
That's true.
how to become
I was
better.
open to listening to advice.
Yes.
That's
And
true.
the other thing,
I've
too-
always been open to that.
Look, I'm sure you probably encountered fanboys where they'd say, "Hey, it's my girlfriend, Mandy Montana. DJ girl."
Actually, no.
Oh, yeah.
No.
Oh yeah.
No?
Oh yeah.
Well, there was the one. There was the one that shall remain nameless because he doesn't deserve the
Well,
time.
this isn't the one that I was talking about, but you guys will remember because I showed up. Y'all were doing a remote at the Gladewater Rodeo,
Chili cook-off, maybe?
the chili cook-off.
Oh, we love chili cook-off.
And this was
forgot
in the
about that
very
guy.
early inception of Whiskey Myers. This was when they first started, and there was a
No.
guitar player,
No.
and he showed up and was heartbroken because Mandy Montana had already left. And he showed up specifically and he would not stop asking questions about.
I knew nothing of this. This
Mandy.
is new information. How many years ago was
let's
this?
say our good friend, Tara Holly Jones will
Yeah.
remember this. Chuckster was there. I think Gary P may have even been there at the time too.
Okay.
Speaking of classic legends, but yeah, that was one that I was really glad after 10 minutes of conversation with him that you did miss him because I'm pretty sure that you would have chewed him up and spit him out pretty quick because he was a good guitar player. I mean, we went
Yeah.
to the show,
Yeah.
and he was really good, but
What?
man, he was
sketchy?
Where's Mandy? Where does she live? When's she on?
Where's she live?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah,
Wow.
he wasn't that spooky, but he was.
Was he cute?
Yes,
Cute stalker.
Yeah, he was.
I mean, I might have let him stalk me for a minute,
And-
Kenny. You could have pointed him in
I
my
know,
direction.
I know, but being in the frame of mind he was in, he would have probably taken that really wrong.
Okay. Well, that's
golly.
nice. Thank you
Anyway,
for stroking my ego today.
Not a problem. That's not the first time or the only time it's ever happened, but it may be the
It's
only
always
time
nice to have those happen.
yeah, I'm
When I was in
blushing.
Milwaukee, I had a couple people send pictures to me and stuff.
Did you really?
But they were really.
The only ones I ever got were from inmates.
I remember that. No.
still have
You
them.
were getting letters
I
from
got
people
letters
at Huntsville, right?
Not Huntsville, at Tennessee Colony.
So that wasn't really big time.
No, it wasn't big time, but they would.
Did you guys really need me here so I could? Because this is spectacular. The things that are coming out of y'all's mouths, I have never heard before.
Really?
Chuck saying, I used to get pictures. Well, I did too, but they were always just from people from inmates.
But no, I remember now those letters.
They weren't pictures of the men.
No.
They would draw
Ooh,
pictures.
I just got a shiver
yeah,
too.
no. It wasn't.
What's in this coffee?
Okay.
And send them to you so you'd be impressed with
They
their
would,
artwork.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I actually was. I was like, wow, this is actually pretty extraordinary. Now, they had a lot of time on their hands. Had a lot of time.
Oh yeah, too much
lot of
time on my
time.
hands.
Yeah.
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 Swisher Sweet in
Yeah.
backward.
I'll-
And now we got Mandee getting
I've got them still.
pics from inmates.
I came across them the other day. I'll have to get them out, take pictures, and post them.
I'm serious.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't cry
Yeah.
like this when I'm sad. This is tremendous.
OnTheCall.net. We haven't got to that.
Yeah.
I wanted to ask you some things about that because I find it's fascinating from a radio point of view, it seems like the holy grail. You know, you open it and it glows and everything, and Harrison Ford is happy or sad. I can't remember the exact scene, but
Yeah.
would be monetizing the web. Stations have been trying to do this for years. So I find it interesting when I see that, you know, folks like yourself have transitioned, you know, to that and are able to do that and to make it work. And also because I'm happy for the schools because you don't need a radio signal anymore. I mean, I know it's satisfying for you. The feedback from the schools must be tremendous. They must be incredibly happy to have you in their corner.
Yeah. Once you get done with terrestrial radio, and me, like so many others that were in the business at one time, you know, once you get turned off by the corporate world of radio conglomerates, and it no longer becomes about the people, and no longer becomes about, you know, working really hard to hone your craft and do your best. And thank God there is still people, and, you know, obviously with all due respect to you, and you know where I'm coming from, that we still have people like Chuck McKinley alive and Larry Thompson alive.
Oh, yeah, totally.
And people that still take it seriously to entertain and be of service to their audience.
Sure.
Mm-hmm.
Once that gets taken away, you got to find something else to do with. And you've already said it, Chuck, which you feel like that's the only craft you have.
Oh yeah, no, I
is
can't
to talk.
I can't do anything else. I
Yes,
don't.
you can.
But you
Well,
can.
I don't.
That's for
want
another
to.
therapy session, though.
I walk every day into KTBB, and I'm totally serious. I take this
Yeah.
deep breath, and I go, "Okay, let's do one more day," because you know I'm at a point in life where, you know, it could be gone tomorrow, and I don't ever. I mean, my goal is to be Tom Perriman. I want to be 90 years old and to do this.
Sure.
That's my goal.
They're not going to have bumper stickers by the time you're 90, okay?
They don't
So,
have them now.
Your hat's just going to be naked. So,
Okay,
you're going to be
stop.
naked hat, Chuck.
Naked. The thing that was going through my mind just
Chuck,
now.
your cigar's not lit. What's wrong?
Okay, now.
Chuck, there's smoke coming out of your eyelids. What's up with that?
Well, okay, it can either be one eyelid or two eyelids.
can't
It kind
get
of
that out of
depends
my
how you
head.
want to throw the ball. You know, I think I'm kind of in Bull Durham territory,
Well-
but I can't remember the exact quote.
Back to your point, that the origin of going to an internet broadcast originated with literally the Tyler Wildcatters. We had minor league baseball here.
Oh, that's right.
In
Yeah,
this
yeah.
market for a few years.
Yes.
Well, there was, if anybody knows anything about minor league baseball, this wasn't like 1A, 2A, or AAA. This was basically like a Class B independent league called the Texas Louisiana Baseball League. And they played in different areas in Texas and Oklahoma, Louisiana and stuff. They had teams. But Sean Collins was an outfielder for the Wildcatters. Well,
I've heard the name, yes.
yeah, Sean was instrumental in being one of the first to really build a kind of inspired the baseball instruction network here around East Texas, because Sean desperately wanted to teach the aspects of basic baseball, craft to kids.
Oh, okay.
And he was the baseball coach at Brook Hill when Brook Hill first had a baseball program. Sean, like most minor leaguers, they didn't have any money. So they would recruit families a lot of time in the area that they played to live. Well,
Okay.
I was living in a house out in New Harmony, up on the top of a hill out in the country, and I had 2 bedrooms, 1 bath, and I had a house all to myself. So Sean came and lived with me for a while.
Okay.
Sean told me a long time ago, and this would have probably been early 2000s, he's the one that literally planted the seed in my head and said, man, I listened to this guy recorded a thing on the, and I listened to it on the computer. That's what you need to do. You need to just do your sportscasting online. I think that's where everything's going. Well, Sean mentioned this a long time before it really boomed. So back when I left KMU in Mineola, being there from 98 to 07, I got into the online thing and joined a online thing called literally audiosportsonline.com. They took care of the audio feed. They took care of setting up your own website. I paid them $300 for the whole season, and they did everything.
Oh, wow. That's
They
great.
built you a website. That was
Sweet.
their service. So I just had to get sponsors. So went to, at the time, my first on-the-air coverage was the 2008 Van Vandal football team, and did that whole season online, 2007. And then it just kind of spearheaded and just kept rolling after that, because, as we all know, local radio just there's not advantageous for them to put local sports on the air anymore, because there's no hard money to be made. From how they look at it, you can talk to Bill Coates and he'll tell you that's incredibly not true, because you just have to go out and get it. You have to find people that believe in it, because most of the time, if you're just talking about one night a week, Friday nights between 7 and 11 p.m. is probably not a huge revenue generating time slot for any local radio station. So you can find a way to turn that into revenue. But it can be.
Yes.
But it can be.
Exactly. So the whole internet thing really started to take off. I bought a mixer. I literally, and Chuck, you and I have talked about this before. Chuck, who's now the voice of onthecall.net, by the way, you can put together a podcast broadcast equipment list, wires, whatever you need to just go on the air without having to craft it all for about $800.
Oh yeah, totally.
So
You're looking at it.
Yeah, you can do it, but after that, it's where we've all talked about before. It's you got to have somebody that knows what they're doing to operate the equipment, to pull it off, to do it right. And there is a right and a wrong way. We see it all the time, especially around this time of year. There is 100 football broadcasts, and most every school wants to have their own broadcast. And all they think they need to do is come up with $800 and they can have a broadcast. But it's that whole talent thing. You got to be able to call the games. You got to know what you're talking about a little bit. I grew up an athlete, but I didn't play college football. I walked on at Sam Houston State, did not make the team. It became very apparent that I was not as good as the guys playing. But I listened to Dick Reisenhoover, Frank Gleber out of Dallas, some big broadcasters, and obviously grew up with Mark Holtz that called Texas Rangers game. And I was one of those guys that had a small Panasonic radio that listened to Bill Coates when he called Dallas Mavericks games, when the Mavericks first came into play. And I listened to him calling SMU football, too, because they were on WBAP or KRLD out of Dallas, which is how you could listen.
Bill, I remember when I moved here in '84 and I heard Bill on BB, and my first thought was, who are you and what are you doing here? Because it's like the KTYL thing. It's like it's out of market. It's something that I'm like, what's the story here? And
we've all looked at this market as being less than when it comes to what we used to tab as big market talent.
Well, it's the number, right?
Yeah.
If you look at the actual market size, the size of the population and where you fall in the rankings of the markets, it is a smaller market, but that does not mean that we don't have big market talent.
Exactly.
Here.
Yeah. And it's just, there's people like, and Bill Coates is another great example, who he didn't settle for this. It's just this is
Family.
where
It's
he
family.
landed. He had family here, and he is good enough to do whatever is asked of him to do when it comes to sales and programming, and especially sportscasting. He can do it in his sleep. I've seen him show up to do shows with a newspaper. You can hear it crinkling while he's doing his show. But he can fill those spots with his thoughts as he is gathering the information to transfer those into the microphone.
And that's not easy.
No.
No.
It's fantastic to listen to and even to watch him. And he's been incredibly instrumental in me doing what I do. But onthecall.net doesn't really come about without the help of not only the guys that I remember trying to sound like and trying to emulate. Mike Patrick. Mike Patrick was the original ESPN Sunday Night Football play-by-play guy.
Okay.
I thought Mike Patrick was the greatest voice delivery. It was so easy to listen to. It was so methodical, and he was just incredibly, and he never got too excited. He never got too lame, and it just sounded like he was just hanging out in a chair, just talking about what he sees. And I've always wanted to just do games like a fan, because I'm not, in my own eyes, like you've mentioned before, I'm not a real good play-by-play guy. I'm good at looking at what I see and trying to transfer that information.
You're a storyteller.
Without it being...
You're a storyteller.
Yeah.
That's why I loved you on 96X. You would tell stories, but there was brevity involved, and I never felt like I'm changing the station because you're too long-winded. So that's your big strength.
Well, thanks, man.
And that's like in play-by-play, same thing, right?
Sure.
Of course, and I've never done play-by-play, but I would think that you would have, the next play is coming up, so you have X amount of time to do this, and then it resets, right?
Yeah. And if you, it's just like anything. It's just like you guys can be without information, and y'all can do a break. Whether it's 12 seconds or 20 seconds, y'all can roll through a break after a while. Now, none of us could do it for a while because we haven't been on live forever, but it'll come back, and we'll get into a swing, and we'll make sure nobody comes through the door ever while we're on the air like normal. And we'll concentrate on one thing. It's the key to success in anything is you went from doing one thing to doing something completely different. But you were emotionally and psychologically, you were already wrapped into, I want to be dedicated to this. And you started to transfer all of your thoughts, everything that was about Mandee, Montana into, I'm going to do this. And then you started doing your homework, and then you started doing your studying, and then you started reading, and then you got completely engulfed in it, and then you started it, and it wasn't a surprise. It wasn't like hey, get in there right now. We'll just see what you can do. Well, no, this isn't something you can do half-assed. I have to be dedicated to what I'm doing because I'm going to try to talk people into making their lives better and feeling better about who they are. And look at what's happened.
Thanks, Kenny.
It's all come about.
That's kind.
And Chuck, God, don't ever smoke again or try to.
Well,
That's the joy of Chuck McKinley. And it just tossing out, because when I found out, when you called me and told me y'all were doing this, I was like, how have they been doing this for 8 weeks and I don't even know what's going on?
That would be my fault.
Well,
because I didn't post it on social media, but it's one of those things, and for anybody that's stumbling across this in retrospect, that's the beauty of a podcast. The beauty of podcasting is what we are all used to doing in live broadcast radio is a lot like what they used to say about the newspaper, that it's going to line the birdcage the next day.
Yeah.
It's gone. It's gone after that moment. This gets to stay.
Sure.
This is evergreen. You'll be able to listen to this in 10 years if you want to. Somebody might find this broadcast that's airing now, that's new, 10 years from now and go, man, who are these people? Oh, wait, I can listen and I can figure out who they are.
Yeah.
And so to me, it's almost like I love documentaries. This feels a little bit like an audio documentary of East Texas radio.
Well, it's definitely getting there. You guys are packing up the guests and the people that are truly mean something to this market.
And I got to say thanks to Chuck because, Kenny, you remarked on the space and what I was doing. And I did start this other podcast about a year and a half to almost 2 years ago with my friend Ashley, which kind of got me into the podcasting space and mine framework. And Chuck and I had just been tossing around the idea of it for years and years and years because we're great friends and
Yes.
we always get together and share broadcast memories over coffee. But once I actually had some experience with the other one, I was like, okay, now I know how to do this.
Yeah.
I actually understand the equipment. I understand how to piece it together. And I convinced Chuck to do this with me. He didn't know it, but I sort of let him take the ball into his court. And he has really, he says this is my thing, but he's really taken the lead with it. And I'm just so grateful, Chuck. I haven't told you this off the mic yet because I haven't had the opportunity, but this has given me the opportunity to say it publicly. You've taken the lead on getting almost all of the guests. You typically lead the show. You show up with notes. I show up with coffee.
Mm-hmm.
I have coffee stain notes literally in front of me.
Literally in front of you. Yeah. But I mean, you take the time to do that. And for me, it's like, I really just enjoy the conversation and seeing what happens organically. But you've taken the lead on making sure that there's actually structure.
Well,
and then you edit. I mean, you've really, thank you. Thank you.
Well, you're welcome. But, I like structure.
I know you do.
I've once told people that it's just because I like to have structure. I like to have things labeled, and I mean it's when I came back to KTBB and was going to be doing the afternoons, anchoring the afternoons. Jeff Rourke, who's now news director, production. Jeff said to me, "Do you have notes when you go on the air?" I go, "Oh, Jeff, oh God, yes." I have like a 3-page.
It's that spiral I carry around with me.
We've edited a comment out that I can't say. No, but
It's going to take a while.
But
I'm sorry, Kenny.
That was just the memories of walking past y'all's office and hearing crap like this. And I'm like, what in the hell is going on in there when I'm down the hall further?
Kenny.
Programming meeting. I do. That's one.
Oh God, I love Chuck McKinley.
I know, I do too.
It's so odd though that I miss things like the nuts and bolts of radio.
Yeah,
little things like when Mandee and I would talk about promotions, we would plan like chili cook-off or the Colgate Country Showdown, knowing that there's a lot of work involved, but knowing the payoff would be
Hey, we should do that for the podcast. Do you want to? Do you want to do promotions and have sales and sponsors?
Colgate Country
the Wonder
Showdown?
Twins could make a return.
Colgate Country Showdown?
No, not that one. But we could do a chili cook-off.
That would be kind
Wouldn't
of
that be
interesting.
fun?
well, you better get Swisher Sweets on as a sponsor because man, we're killing it right now.
I never knew.
It's a whole new way with this culture, man. They're going to try it.
I never knew this about chili. About chili cook-offs until we did it, about the no beans
serious.
thing.
It's a serious thing.
But what I didn't know is that no beans is what they have. That's the deal. They don't.
That's because you're from up north and you have beans in your chili up north.
And I never liked beans in my chili. So when I heard about that, I go, okay, thank you. Now you're cooking.
Yeah.
Now we're cooking.
But I ended up, there was probably a year and a half, even after the ranch, where they would invite me to do, the chili cook-offs and judging.
Yep, same.
But the last time I did it, oh gosh, I was judging like wings, chili, something else, and they gave me like 2 beers, and I was miserable. And I just I'm backing off. It's like, no, I can't do this anymore.
Yeah, it was such a treat because
Because
after
the porta potties are on the other side of the rodeo arena.
that's in part, yeah. But it was nice. We got invited to be like final table judges, which if you've ever been to a chili cook-off, they'll take just about anybody as a blind chili judge and they explain how to do it. But the first few rounds are not the best chili. You got a lot of amateurs, but they weed them out and they get to a final table. And so if you get invited to be at the final table, you're sitting next to the likes of Mark Skirdo.
That's right.
And let me tell you, you're eating decent chili at that point.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's where you want to be. And we did get invited to do that a few times. It was
I
fun.
think the last time I went, I'm sure Skirdo was there.
Me too.
As a matter of fact, I know he was.
Yeah.
I wanted to ask you something about onthecall.net. I know it's kind of a rough segue. So I know that obviously you sell sponsors, you monetize it that way. Do you do things like, for instance, okay, you've heard the game free, but do you have it to where like Lindale game from last year? Do you have it to where, listeners can subscribe and download games and that sort of thing?
Yeah. The matter of fact, audiosportsonline.com went dark a couple of years ago. Believe it or not, this was 2 brothers that were, I think, production director and afternoon talent at a radio station in Atlanta. And they
Wow.
did this on their own in their own home office where they literally sold these subscriptions. They had 42 teams that these guys would tackle but they did a lot of minor league hockey.
Oh,
they
wow.
did a lot of small college broadcasts, and then they did a few high schools around the nation. So we were actually just one of many. When they went dark, they called and told me, listen, we're going to start transitioning you over to YouTube Live. So just know that this year we're going to go ahead and still take care of everything when it comes to your website and archiving your broadcasts. But just know next year you're on your own. Now you can still do your YouTube Live. You just can't play commercial music. So you got to change all your music to non-commercial. So that next year, it was. I just decided not to because Eric James, who is a guy that at one time was trying to buy a radio station. He was interested in the frequency out of Canton. I think that now is
1510.
I think so.
Yeah.
Well, Eric was he's
have
a
an FM
he's a
translator,
radio
too.
junkie and loved the process of terrestrial radio. And Eric started 903sports.com, which is who I've kind of partnered with now. So we're going through them now. So now onthecall.net is basically just a vehicle and a connection and a loop into 903sports.com. So we're a part of a network now with Edgewood Bulldog, Martins Mill basketball. I think there's 5 different teams that are a part of that. But Eric works through, they do all the maintaining of the platform. I work my audio program goes through Mixlr, mixlr.com. So now all I really have to do, Mixlr is all free. So I literally, when I set my equipment up and I get ready to do a game, I literally just open Mixlr. It pops up my EQ and my program. And when I'm ready to go, I push go and
it goes?
we go.
Oh, neat.
So 903sports.com now takes care of all that archive. But when you go to onthecall.net, you can click onto the game as early as like midnight that night now. Now, audiosportsonline.com would guarantee it by the next day. But now it literally, I can download it as soon as the game's over. I download it, it gets loaded up. And most of the time, we have teams, we have families that literally will go home, and that's their Friday night, Saturday morning routine is they go home, most of the time after a win, and they pick up pizza or popcorn. They go home, they kick the game on, and they hang out with the kids all night listening to the broadcast.
That's cool. That's
Fun.
awesome.
That's been what's kind of taking care of what goes back to what we all miss is that's how we serve the public now. That's how you kind of enjoy what you do now is that it gives families a little bit of a vehicle to bunch together and do something family time now.
And you know what, Kenny? I was thinking earlier too that it has to be something that I mean, granted, there's the format of the game, but since you're the one operating, you must have a great deal of flexibility as far as getting other information in, things
Yes.
like that.
I bought a Rodecaster Pro, which is just for those that don't know, it's just a machine. But the Rodecaster Pro acts as because my setup used to be 2 laptops and a mixer and headphone amp. And so I had basically a studio in the press box. Now, anybody that's ever traveled to do high school football, there's some press boxes that are like a porta potty with a window.
I have heard Marshall.
Marshall's bad. Kilgore, God bless their hearts. Kilgore has got a lot of money, but they put it into anything else but a press box.
Yeah.
The guys at broadcast over there, Doug Smith and his son, do a spectacular job, and they're always very accommodational. They know that we're in a crap part to try to do a game. But anyway, the equipment, I'm now down to just a Rodecaster Pro and a small laptop because that Rodecaster Pro, you can load all of your audio elements, my Chuck McKinley intro, the halftime show, the post game, all my commercials have a hotkey. It's almost like we're going back to Scott Studios.
Oh, wow.
Nice.
So everything has a hotkey. So now when I need to go to a break, I mute my microphones and push one button. I've built in music bumpers at the end of all the commercials that play. You've loaded music bumper to get me back into the broadcast. So everything is as smooth as hopefully, you want it to be if we were doing this on the radio. The only difference is we're in control of the timing.
That's amazing because I've been the person on the backside of it at the studio. I
Yeah.
was for years for the Lobo football broadcast.
And that's a horrible job, isn't it?
No, it was so much fun. I loved it. I actually really, really loved it.
Yeah.
And I was the person waiting for Lobo football will be back in 1 minute.
Okay.
And then where you're doing it yourself from the press box, you're loading up your commercials. I was the girl that made sure that the commercials ran and kept track of the commercial log and stuff. It's fascinating to me now that with technology the way that it is,
Yeah.
you can do those guys that I worked with, love them dearly. That would have boggled their mind to
Sure.
be pushing those buttons. They were used to Mandy Montana being in
Yes,
control
it
of it
would
at the
have.
studio. It would have boggled their minds. But
Yep.
Brian Houston, of course, does those broadcasts now. But
Yep.
but I worked with a good team. It was Brent and Johnny and Eddie.
And Eddie, yeah.
Yeah, for years.
Yeah.
And they were a lot of fun.
Classic, longtime broadcasters.
Yes.
Some of the sweetest men
Yes.
in the history of the world.
Yep. They treated me well.
Well, it's down to that now, to where
That's cool.
This Roadcaster Pro makes it available to where
I want to come watch you do a game. Can I do
that'd
that?
be great. The Lindale press box is humongous.
Is it?
Great.
There's room for 5 people to sit down on the bottom.
Yeah.
It's all glass. So, and like I said, the Kilgore press box is awful because if you sit at the counter's only, I think, 13 inches wide.
Oh, my.
Oh, wow.
And if you sit down at the counter comfortably with the counter up against your belly, you can see between the 20s.
Oh, my.
So in order to see the scoreboard, you have to literally press your forehead against the window.
Okay.
So it's a little tough for
Yeah, I won't
color
come to Kilgore.
commentators, but no. But
see
like I
Lindale.
said, I'm not dogging these guys because
No.
they've had to live with us for a long time.
Yeah.
But Lindale's got a spectacular press facility. There's plenty of room for both of y'all. There's actually a second story. Y'all can set up right above us, and it won't be blocking the view of the
How
field at
cool.
all. So, yeah.
We
so,
can be your guests some Friday night?
that would be
right.
awesome.
Okay.
What's cool is, and get back to your point too, Chuck, at halftime, because I've got an incredibly loyal network of sponsors that have been part of this for all 5 years. And if y'all don't mind me mentioning them.
No,
well,
do
Doc
it.
Deason is one of them. Doc is, Doc's half Kenny. My life would be awful if I didn't have that man. Doc, Brad
Doc
Root.
is Doc.
Yep.
He's just Doc.
Yep. Brad Root Construction, Alford's Tire, Harvey owns Alford's Tire. It's the entire family. His old son, Jacob, is a coach at Lindale. His youngest son, Evan, just graduated, was a spectacular wide receiver for them, and he is dedicated to Lindale high school football or supporting the school.
Mm-hmm.
So, the office barn, which anybody knows John
Oh,
Longcrier, that guy
Sure.
is fun as all get out. And Mason Terry, all those guys up there are dedicated to Lindale sports. So I've got a network of sponsors that take care of all that, and they're always a part of the broadcast. They love it. Well, at halftime of all the home games, I ask them to come to the stadium where they get halftime to come and sit down and talk about their business.
Oh, neat.
And get people a little bit closer.
Great.
Homecoming, we will normally have somebody that played Lindale football years ago to come in and tell stories about the stadium
That's
and
awesome.
their experience.
That's terrific, Kenny.
A year ago, Ronnie Fisher, incredibly poignant evening, and I may or may not get through this story, but Ronnie Fisher was a Vietnam War vet. I met Ronnie because he ran a car lot in Grand Saline when I was working at KMU. He sponsored our broadcast at KMU. Ronnie and I struck up a friendship immediately because he's got that magnetic personality. Ronnie played quarterback for Lindale in 63, 64, and 65.
Okay.
He played as a freshman. I've been trying to get him to come to a game on homecoming to tell about his years of playing football at Lindale. And he had some spectacular stories. Still had plenty of friends. Had friends that were working the press box that night. But Ronnie was at Vietnam. So Ronnie was on the dark side of coming home from Vietnam. Ronnie had never shared his Vietnam experience with his wife, with his children. Had never had a time where he sat down and spoke to them about his experience and why he was the man he was. So when I learned this, we had, obviously it's homecoming. We had a welcome home celebration for him when he came to the press box. when he got a chance to get on the mic at halftime, put the headset on, and our PA announcer at the stadium, and I wish to goodness I never can remember his name right off the bat. If I had my phone, I could do it. But great PA guy. And we've had a couple of situations where we had honored kids at the stadium, and I'll type something up. I'll say, hey, can we mention them or something? And he will read it like a seasoned pro. And just it is spellbinding to listen to him read these. And I typed something up about Ronnie, and I said, will you make sure that this gets out? And about time Ronnie was done with his interview, PA announcer started telling the story about this guy's in the stadium, and he's up in the press box. And I just barely got a piece of him in my headphones because we've got a crowd mic obviously out there. And this entire stadium came to their feet, and the visiting stands at homecoming came to their feet. And for the first time in Ronnie Fisher's 70-something years on this earth, somebody was recognizing him for the sacrifices he made, and for them being in his presence. You could just feel it. And I looked down on the home stands, and everyone was staring up, and evidently they knew exactly where he was. And I'm watching these, 4,000 or 5,000 people. Lindale Stadium was packed at homecoming. It always is. But everybody was on their feet. And I turned and looked at Ronnie and his wife. And his wife, Connie, just had her hand over her mouth. And I mean, it was just an incredibly poignant moment. But he told the story about how he survived Vietnam on the air.
Wow.
At halftime that day. With his wife sitting behind him, and she had never heard the story. And he shared it and got it off his chest, dedicated his entire stay at halftime to his brothers that did not make it back with him. So that's that moment that you guys have in your heart and your head, something that happened where you felt the impact of what you do and who you are.
Sure.
And you carry it with you, and it gets you to day 2 when you get those phone calls or those texts or those emails and somebody says, hey, thank you. Mm-hmm. You know, this is what you did for me. This is how you affected me.
You do a good job.
Yeah.
It's simple.
And for the last time before we get done if we ever get done talking, there's never an end to us. Okay. Don't ever, especially in front of Mandee and I, or anybody else you have in this chair.
Yeah.
Okay. Don't ever make it sound like you haven't made an impact on somebody that sits in this chair. And I don't care what you believe. Okay. There's plenty of you sitting right here, right now in front of this microphone. And I guarantee you there's plenty of you right over there that's been talking in that microphone too.
There's plenty. So I have to edit out that one remark and then plenty of me. I don't know. You know,
you're just going to go right back to a fat joke, aren't you?
No, I'm. This is what. No. This is what I. This is what I tell. This is what I tell people when I say, I have been fortunate to talk for a living for 47 years. I still get to be in the game every day. I was told Paul Gleiser a couple of weeks ago. I kind of did a Badger. You know who Badger Bob Johnson is, right?
No.
Badger Bob Johnson.
See an old jock somewhere, right?
No, Badger Bob. No? Badger Bob was a professional hockey coach. He was a coach of the University of Wisconsin.
Of course, it's hockey. Hockey.
How did I miss that?
We need a hockey podcast. I'm writing it down right now.
His son Mark was with the 80 team, but also is the coach of the women's team at Wisconsin. Highly successful. Badger Bob would say, today is a great day for hockey. And he would say that every day. But he was the coach for the U.S. national team, but also in Wisconsin, but also for the Pittsburgh Penguins. I'm sure he won the cup there with Mario early in his career, but he also passed. But that's what Badger Bob would say. It's a great day for hockey.
Yeah.
I always feel it's always a great day for radio because the best thing that, and we've all done it in this room. We've transitioned to other things. And you touched on it earlier where those things that we've done, we apply them to what we do currently.
Amen.
I always say to people, when I tell, like, for instance, I have to edit our website on the weekend every 6 weeks. I'm doing it this week. I was up this morning with the dog at 4:00, looking at the web and putting
With the dog.
Well,
Princey.
he's got to eat.
Yes.
No, every 12 hours he gets fed, and trust me, it's the stare, then it's the lean, then he's like leaning back on my foot. It's like, okay, let's eat.
You and that dog.
Because when he eats, he passes out for like 4 hours. So,
Yeah.
but I always tell people that when we talk about the website during news meetings, I always say that I relate to it like music, because I'll pull it up vertically and look at headlines. How is the formatting? Are the pictures, line up? I mean, sometimes I'll say, like a picture looks off, or maybe it's something that, there'll be like a jailhouse picture and you go, it's too dark. Let's lighten it up. I mean, physically lighten the picture up because it's not setting right. But I look at things in terms of, music. Instead of Garth Brooks, maybe it's a big Tyler story here, but we all have that in our toolbox, right? You do. Mandee, you do when you do.
Just look at my social media news feed.
Exactly.
It's a mix of things. There's usually a picture of Mandee, and then there's a quote, and then there might be a reel, but you're probably not going to see 2 pictures of Mandee back to back. You might see 2 quotes back to back, though, because those are powerful.
All right. Well, you can transition the hockey show, by the way, into another guest that.
Who?
Brian Boatman. Okay. Mandee probably has never met him.
I haven't.
Brian
Okay.
was part-time at KNUE back in the day.
Mid-90s,
maybe? Yeah.
Brian Boatman
Great
was
voice.
part of the original lineup at KTMJ. Chuck was at KNU at this time. Magic 104, when 104.1 first one on the air. We were KTMJ.
It was adult contemporary.
Yes,
Magic.
yes.
It
John Bullock, my old roommate, would die if he didn't know that I was going to say soft and easy favorites from yesterday and today.
But it was kind of it failed.
Yes, yeah. Well, it failed because when I worked my way up to, the original lineup was Jimmy Rabbit. Brian Boatman did middays.
Was Bobby there? Bobby
Bell was programming. Bobby Bell did afternoons. Paul Kaiser did evenings.
Wow.
Paul, a great
That's
classic
a great
name.
lineup.
No, Kaiser.
Yep.
Great. Kaiser's got a great voice.
Yep. Kaiser's a guy that got out of radio and said, "I think I want to become a doctor," and he went to France.
What?
Yeah, he's a doctor now.
Wow, okay.
Yeah.
But isn't he in Bullard? Is he in Bullard?
No, he's here. He's out of the South, right there, Grande and South Broadway.
Okay, what's his specialty?
UT Health. He's GC. I went in and had a physical with him just probably a few months ago. So,
Wow.
yeah, doing great. Looks exactly the same. He's the same Paul
I'm
Kaiser.
jealous. Jeez, I don't want to hear that.
Anyway, Boatman is a huge hockey fan.
Okay.
Brian Boatman did sports talk before David Smoke started sports talk in this market.
Where was he on BB?
He was at BB, yeah. And Brian ended up, I think, producing the first couple of shows before Daffod took over. Daffod Morgan was the first producer there.
Because I've heard Daff stories. Because I've asked Daff, I said, you ever been on the air? He goes, oh, no, Daff.
No, even when he's invited.
But no. And I always, but Daff is fun. Have you ever been around Daffod and Melissa
Absolutely.
when they have conversations?
I have a Daffod Morgan story that I'm going to have to tell you guys, and I don't know time limit stuff. But,
No, keep going.
okay, well, Daffod is a staunch NASCAR fan. I mean, he's NASCAR crazy, and he has been for years.
Yes.
Daffod and his wife saved up enough money to buy a lawnmower, a riding lawnmower.
Did he George Jones the heck out of it?
The first time that he was able to make a huge purchase, and they went to Lowe's. I know this is going to get a little wild, but the first time, you want to wait for her to get back for the laughter factor?
Okay.
Okay.
What? Daffod Morgan?
Daffod, okay, we're just going to say this right out. We're starting a story, and a coffee drop precipitated us. Go with your story, Kenny.
Oh, my.
Well, we started to mention Brian Boatman, who was one of the original cast members when 104.1 first went on the air. But it put me back to KTBB when Daffyd Morgan was producing one of the first sports talk shows, because Brian Boatman actually started sports talk in this market. Daffyd was a huge NASCAR fan. Daffyd was also 10 times more a Jeff Gordon fan.
Oh.
So he was all Jeff Gordon. And you work with Daffyd now, and you know how dedicated he is to the things that he's dedicated to.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Talk about structured. The guy's never worn a pair of pants in his life.
Shorts.
Ever.
No.
No,
And it's
pants. Doesn't wear
camouflage.
pants, yeah.
With a gray shirt.
Yep. Shorts only.
I mean,
Okay.
we always have this thing that we say, we know it's really, really cold if Daff wears pants. And I can only remember like twice in over like 10 years.
I've never seen him in pants.
You know,
Okay.
we kind of
Anyway.
do the over-under on, important things.
Well, Daffyd's a big Jeff
Weddings.
Gordon fan. And this is back in the day when it was all Jeff Gordon and Jimmy Johnson were battling it out to win races. Well, Daffyd and his wife had saved up enough money to make their first big purchase in their life, which was going to be a new riding lawnmower.
Okay.
So they save up their money. They talk about it. Saturday morning comes. Daffyd goes to Lowe's and he buys him a riding lawnmower. He takes it home. He mows the lawn. Sunday comes, he's in front of the TV, he's watching his NASCAR race, and Jimmy Johnson rams Jeff Gordon into the wall, and Jeff Gordon loses the race.
Okay.
Daffyd Morgan goes out, loads the mower back up, and takes it back to Lowe's and returns it.
Because Jimmy Johnson.
Jimmy
was
Johnson
sponsored?
drives the Lowe's car.
Yeah, I was like, yeah. I don't know a lot about NASCAR, but I did know that one.
It was either the same day
Wow.
or the next day.
Things are becoming clearer.
Yeah.
That
So did he go
was-
to Home Depot and buy a Tony Stewart?
I
Oh,
don't know.
What?
I don't know. I just know that I've had that story. That has been one of the greatest non-radio radio stories.
That's a great
I've ever-
one.
Hold on. Yeah, because I love the guy.
So would it be a coup to have Daffyd come on and be our guest?
You know what? I've asked
Would he
about
do it? It's not actual.
I don't know.
It's not
I don't think
live.
It'd be a short show.
I don't
Really?
know. But
Hey,
there
no
are
pun
times-
intended.
There are times that him and Melissa will be talking, and I'll say, we need to record this because they are really funny.
Yes.
They can. I mean, I'll find a fourth mic, man. Let's bring them in, or I'll just sit over there in the corner and let y'all talk.
I would kid Meredith. I would say, Meredith, we should need to have you come in and talk about traffic and helping run a radio station. It's like a hard no. I mean,
There are some good stories there, though. I've worked
Yeah.
traffic, and I'm not talking about the traffic that's going around the Loop 323. I'm talking about the commercial traffic.
yeah.
For
yeah,
those that aren't in the
yeah.
business.
No, Meredith is like, no, I'm not going to do this. And I was, oh, come on.
Well, I did need to finally get around to the keys that are on the table here.
Yeah, what's the story? They
Well-
look like they are caked in. I mean,
Take
Mud?
muck.
Well, Chuck will click on this before you will, Mandy, just because we lived it. But I was going to ask y'all a question because I know we've had so many things that have impacted what we do.
Mm-hmm.
Your worst day
my worst day in radio.
in radio?
That's a tough one.
Yeah.
It's a tough one because I was a very young broadcaster, and it's kind of a long story, and I'm not going to do it justice because I'm going to get emotional. But one of my radio broadcast partners that taught me a lot early on taught me production. I used to run Sunday morning broadcasts on KFRO AM 1370 when I was, we're talking 18, 19, 20-year-old
Yeah.
Mandy. Charlie Thomason. Did you ever work with Charlie?
No, but I knew him.
Yeah, so Charlie was really sick. He had cancer, and he worked through it. Charlie and Gary Mason really kind of got me started, and they taught me the ins and outs of the basics, pushing buttons and making sure the mic was on.
Sure.
The basics, right? But they were both very kind, very good mentors to me. And Charlie passed at the radio station, and I found him. That was my hardest day in radio.
We've had a lot of serious talks. I didn't know that you were the one that found him.
I found Charlie. Yeah, it was a really tough day.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think I had worked with him for about 2 years before that.
What year was this?
I was still at Kicks, so maybe 2004.
Okay.
I think, because I came, or it might have been early 2005, because I came and joined the ranch staff with Chuck and Bob and Tom in May of 2005. So it was prior to that. I think it was 2004. I think it was that summer. I'm pretty sure it was, because I don't think I was in school at the time. And I had gone to Kilgore College while I was working at KYKX and KFRO those years. It was... There was another person at the studio with me that day. I found him.
Wow.
Yeah, and had to call the program director and the ambulance, and it was really.
And
tough.
then you had the rest of the day.
Yeah.
A week to deal with it.
Yeah, and went to his funeral in South Louisiana. First time I met his family. It was a tough day.
Charlie was a sweet man.
Very sweet man. Yeah, very
organized, task oriented. The basics mattered.
cheerful. He was cheerful too.
He was he was one of those guys you would say, "How are you?" And it wasn't like, here's my 10 gloom and doom things. He was,
you wouldn't have known he was sick.
Sure.
He shared his diagnosis, but he didn't act like he was sick. But yeah, he's kind of like a Tom Perryman, and I say this kind of lightly to kind of lift things back up just a minute. But, he died with his boots on, so to speak.
Amen.
He was in the station doing the thing. Tom didn't, but he came darn near close. I mean, he did the show until he couldn't do the show.
Oh yeah, we thought Tom passed a few times in that building. So
yeah,
Tom
bless him.
Yeah,
but yeah, that was my hardest day.
Yeah, not trying to drag it down, but have you got a worse day?
I tend to be one of these fatalists that I tend to look at the last big screw up as the toughest, but I have a few things, but there's a few things I just don't want to share.
Okay.
Yeah.
It's just that. I mean,
do you have a lighthearted, biggest mistake you want to share, maybe?
No, I got a few of those.
I do.
Tell you about.
I do. This was one that's probably, I will say this, terrified me the most. And I used to be one of those people too that early in my career, I was I'd get angry and, like Dave Moreland, our friend, would say evil Dave. I wasn't really evil Chuck, but I was screaming Chuck. And one day I, blurted out an expletive loud and my voice left for about 5 minutes.
Oh,
and
did you feel like it was karma?
Yeah, it terrified me. When I was in Milwaukee radio, we had a situation where the cue system malfunctioned, right?
Uh-oh.
Oh, wow.
And I'm sitting there and I did something didn't work, and I went, oh, blank. And I could hear it in my headphones, and I literally sat there and I thought I was going to pass out and, go to the bathroom all over myself because it meant it went over the air. And somebody calls and says, I heard that, and I just said, no, you didn't, and hung up. I didn't know, but I didn't know what to do.
You were young.
Yeah. And I didn't tell anybody. And we had a memo from engineering, I guess midday the next day, saying, there's a malfunction on the Q channel. Just watch out what you do. I should have just probably went to management and said, this happened. It's not my fault, obviously. And I didn't. I still stayed at the station, I think another year and a half, but it was one of those stations where it was WMIL in Milwaukee, and it was a new build, which first and only new build. It was a Chicago frequency, which they moved the transmitter, I think, from Janesville, Wisconsin to Milwaukee. So I was there when they turned the lights on, and I think I lasted through maybe about 3 ownership changes, 4 PDs, 3 GMs. And
my goodness.
When I was let go, I remember Doug Keel said, well, it's your time, which I never understood that forever. I never understood that forever. But
you're up, Chuck.
But sometimes that's just it,
Yeah.
And then my program director, Chuck White, who had just gotten fired, was moving to KTBB. He'd worked for Don Chaney about 2 other times. And Chuck calls me and says, you want to come to Tyler? And I said, sure. And long about Kansas City, I thought, where am I going? Because it was just, and I eventually found out it was a 21-hour drive.
My goodness.
And so if you ever wanted to be driving and, start seeing things and get delusional, drive 21 hours straight.
Yeah.
It was just nuts. But yeah, I mean, there's one other thing, but it's just one of those things. And then I'll tell you it off mic, but it was just something that when it happened, it was it was changing in a couple of ways, but you know, it was one of those things.
So the
Okay.
keys, Kenny, do they have to do with your worst day in radio?
Yeah, it was kind of culminated into the whole reason because I know you and I have been in discussions about symbolism, and you know,
Yeah.
I remember going through effort after effort to try to get you to watch the film Phenomenon,
Yeah.
and then you finally watched it. And Doc and I got into a discussion about that this morning, and it was a ghostly thing that happened because there's a line in Phenomenon with John Travolta when he's trying to explain to the children that he's dying, but he doesn't have to explain it. One of the little boy in the film says, "You're dying, aren't you?" And he has this apple, and he takes a bite out of the apple, and he explains to the kid, you know, take a bite of it. Now we're all together. And he said, you know, everything's on its way somewhere else. So a large part of my life is spent, you know, recognizing and trying to pay attention to the symbolic pieces that fall around us all the time that we're supposed to gravitate to and hold on to. So when I got the call in 99 at KMU, I didn't get the call. Jason got the call and came and got me off the air and said, JD didn't show up for work. And it was like 7 o'clock. And I'm like, okay, well, why is somebody calling you? And he said, well, no, they called you. It was Mel, his wife, that called and wanted to know if somehow, because JD and I would talk every once in a while in the morning. Anyway, JD Patrick was a longtime friend. A lot of us worked with him.
Yeah.
Chuck worked with him.
Yep.
JD was my program director at 104 for a while when Bobby left. We were great friends. JD was on his way in to do the morning show at Classic Rock 96.1. Back then it was 96X. But anyway, was in a horrific car accident on 155.
That bridge.
It was just he had passed that bridge,
Oh, yeah?
Chuck, and unfortunately there was an old man that worked overnights and he fell asleep. And because it's that long, now that, you know, they've expanded the highway, so now it's a really long turn.
Okay.
Well, at the time, it was just a short, long left turn. Well, the old man was in JD's lane, but because of the angle of the turn, you can't tell that he's coming at you. And it was just, you know, they hit head on. They both of them lost their lives. But it took a while. Find out JD wasn't at work. They called and woke Mel up. Mel actually drove up on the wreck scene. So anyway, a lot of things went on with that because JD Patrick he was kind of a staple in the classic rock thing at the time because he was doing mornings when the studio moved to where it is now, right across the street here, and JD was upstairs in the studio once we moved it upstairs. So JD was kind of the first relocation of the classic rock and kind of the signature doing the morning show. And JD had a very calming voice, and he was not your typical classic rock
He wasn't
guy.
a screamer at all.
But he had long gray hair. He helped produce Stevie Nicks' Belladonna album.
Really? I didn't know that.
He helped produce a couple of soundtracks when he was working in Dallas. Yeah, he worked part-time in Dallas the whole time he was working with us here in town.
Okay.
He didn't tell anybody.
Where?
Well, he literally did a smooth jazz shift on 106. I think at the time was 106.1 was the Oasis out of Dallas. 107.5.
Rod Wayne.
107.5. Yeah, Rod did the same thing.
Yeah.
Well, JD did a shift there at times on the weekends. Anyway, Mel obviously was to pieces when we finally got to Mel, and it's not to drag the show down or anything,
No,
but it's you know, you guys started this thing to bring back, you know, historically the things that happened to us here in the market, and we've gone through our share of
Yes.
heartbreaks and stuff. But Doc Deason, Jeff Evans, and I, Mel, for some reason, her only wish was, I need to get his golf clubs. JD evidently had just taken up the game of golf.
Okay.
And he was obsessed with it. And JD had zero athletic ability at anything. And JD would be the first to tell you, I'm naturally a lazy person, Kenny, so I'm okay not helping you move. So can you move on to somebody else? So that was JD. He just knew who he was, and he goes, I'm okay just being a little tubby and moving slow. And he wore baggy blue jeans all the time, tucked his shirt in. He was just the calmest, most easygoing guy in the world, and he was in radio. Anyway, it was a tough day, but when there was not a real good crash investigation done, and we went to his truck, which they had already towed the next day to a site, and Doc and Jeff and I went to the truck, mostly just at Mel's, because she was in pieces, of course, and went through his truck to get what she wanted. It was a horrible day, and I found those keys.
Yeah.
And those keys were really, it's symbolic now that I still obviously have a piece of JD. Well, this morning I'm on my way in, and I'm getting mad at myself because I didn't wear the shirt JD gave me.
Oh.
Chuck mentioned this on the air because that week after JD's death, Doc was in the building doing part-time at the time, and Doc took over and was doing the morning show to cover for JD. And we did kind of a full week-long show tribute to JD for the entire week. And like little by little, a lot of us went to the studio and we spent an hour or so with Doc and just talking about JD. And I wore that dang shirt because JD wore that shirt to work on a Saturday morning one time, and it's an Atlanta Braves awesome old jersey with this big script. And I'm like, dude, I love that shirt, but where did you get it? That's not something you normally wear.
Yeah.
He goes, man, Mel got this for me or something. I don't even really like it. And he just took it off and gave it to me. And I'm like, I love that shirt. And he goes, well, here, man, I don't really even like it. Just tell her it tore or something. Tell her it's small or something. So I wore that shirt when we were doing our little thing about JD. And Chuck brought it up. That kind of tells the signature of JD Patrick. But it's just our way of just making sure he gets folded into the history of kind of our day-to-day and what you guys are doing, and kind of symbolic of what y'all are delivering to the rest of us is, listen to some of the great things we remember and we take away from what we've already been a part of. So,
and Kenny, you may be able to answer this. I had heard this at the time when JD was programming 96X, that he had done such an excellent job of programming it, and because even then, a lot of classic rock stations were like 300 songs and that's it. And that's not what it was for 96 at the time. I had understood that, regional, national management were impressed enough to use his database, his music database, and the imprint of the station, in other places. Is that true?
Yes. Yeah. And remember back then, we still typed it out. It still got typed out on almost like a fax machine. Yeah. But it would type it out. You could put in that roll of old teletype paper or something. Okay. And it would type it out all together where you could just put it in a big envelope and send it.
Yes.
Matter of fact, he asked, oh my gosh, big time consultant guy out of
Lee Abrams?
Out of Dallas. Thank you. Unbelievable. I was about to say Gordon McClendon, but Lee Abrams,
because he was the classic rock
was
guru,
consulting with Rick Reynolds when we switched over to country at 104.
Okay.
And JD was friends with Lee Abrams. I can't believe he just blurted that name out. He asked Lee Abrams, what is your opinion on me sharing this information? And all Lee said was, are they going to give you credit? Because JD never got credit for a executive or a producer credit for his work on Belladonna, for his work on the 2 soundtrack albums.
Never.
So, but JD got albums. He got sent recognition because of the album, but they didn't put him on the cover, on the jacket at all, and that hurt him.
Yeah.
So Lee asked him specifically, and I'm guessing he remembered that because Lee said, "Are you going to get credit?" Mm-hmm. And he said, "I'll ask." And Lee, if I'm not, and I may be screwing this whole thing up, but I think Lee made a phone call. And Lee endorsed, I think, what was going on with that.
Okay.
Where JD may have been the first to take an original idea of classic rock doesn't have to be freaking 300 songs with 2 Pink Floyds, and everybody should do it. I think Lee may have endorse JD in that venture.
Well, that's the thing I find painful with classic rock, classic country. It's just this sameness. I mean, I don't know.
Yeah.
Homogenized.
Thank you. That's okay. Yes.
I am quite all right with never, ever hearing Sweet Home Alabama again.
I've gotten to the point.
It's a classic, but we're Alabama'd out.
I have gotten to the point, too, and I think it has to do with, with the history
What
of
about
the
Freebird, Kenny? How do you feel about that?
Freebird. Like the history of the
Sorry.
Eagles, right? Have been
Sorry.
played.
All I think about
I hear Hotel California.
is
and I
those
just
liners we added that one time. And you were in the building, and there was a liner in there where there's a drunk fool, and they're talking about who likes classic rock, and you hear this drunk guy, on this liner go, "Play Freebird!" It's like 'cause it's all drunk people want to hear when they go into live band.
Freebird.
They just play Freebird.
Get the lighter out.
Yeah.
Can you see me? Hey, can you see me?
Listen, after Swisher Sweets, you don't flick nothing, man.
Oh, yeah.
I don't want to see you flicking.
That was the worst in shock therapy ever. Great moments in radio history.
Yeah, but thank you for letting me share that story because
Thank you for sharing.
when Doc brought it up this morning, he said, "Man, if there's an avenue, you need to work JD." And I said, "Doc, I can't tell you. It's been 8 minutes since you brought this up. I was in the truck, getting out of the truck, and I'm reaching down looking for eye drops in my truck door." And I had put those keys in my truck when we moved because I wanted to know exactly where they were.
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
I'd already packed my, keepsake box or something. And I pulled those out and I'm like, this is going to take the place for me wearing that dang Braves shirt.
Yeah.
And then Doc brings it up at the table.
Yeah.
And I'm like, okay, well, JD's got to be somewhere.
I'm so glad you brought him up because Chuck and I have kind of tossed around different topic ideas alongside guests.
Yeah.
And one of them was kind of a memorial show because we've lost a lot of really great people in the market
That's a great
over
idea.
the years. And I think this is kind of a touch point on it. I don't know if we'll, maybe do a best of style where you kind of weave them together or if we invite, a larger group somehow, if I can logistically figure it out and share some memories. But, like Chris Dyer, I never had the opportunity to work with Chris, but I know so many people
Chris.
who,
Awesome voice.
Tell me
Loved
she
him.
wouldn't have fell in love with Chris Dyer.
Oh, we would have been buds. I understand.
Chris Dyer had this awesome voice. I remember listening to the audition tape in Amy Austin's office. I don't know, 94, 95. We need an afternoon person, and just going, how it is when you hear that voice and you're like staring at the recorder and going, who is this person and when can we get him here?
Yeah.
It's kind of like when I was told that when I was programming the ranch and Rick Guest said, what if Don Jones did mornings? Like, yes. Because one of the things I said to Don is, what are you doing here? Because I would hear his voice and I would say, this is, then he would said, because I was familiar with Don's work at the Bull, doing mids, and I was an admirer because I would hear the station. I would go, well, there's possibilities, but I don't know if they can, dent Kicks at the time. Because, ratings notwithstanding, Kicks had all the money in Longview, and all the clients and stuff. But yeah.
That's interesting, but that's a great idea, though. I mean, Chris Dyer being one.
I mean, I just think honoring the people that we all knew and worked with and loved. And I mean, I did not I didn't know the story about JD. I mean, I did. I knew that JD passed. I knew that he was on his way to work and it was 155, but I never had the opportunity really to work with him. I'm not sure if I listened to him.
Yeah.
Just age wise, but I've heard so many people had great respect for him in the market. And then, like Jason, I knew Jason just a little bit. He tried to hire me at KMU whenever I was working for Chuck on the ranch, offered me a really nice package, but I was like, I will take the interview with you, but I'm telling you now, I really like where I'm at. I'm very happy, but I also really respect you and have heard that you are an amazing person to work for. So let's talk, understanding that I'm probably not going anywhere.
That was a sad day, by the way. I was going to tell you about that when he had to come and tell me that, first of all, he said he was going to call you.
Yeah.
I'm like,
good luck.
She's going to like us drive to Mineola all the time, man. But thank you for bringing him up, though. Jason Hightower was owner and one of my closest friends.
KMU is still this, to me, touchstone of local radio because they still give kids a chance to do to try it
Sure.
out.
Yeah.
I was sitting there a couple nights ago. I'll just, I mean, my drive home is 7 minutes now, but I'll sit there and put it on 99.3, and 17-year-old girl talking about, somebody's selling an oak table or something. I go, okay.
That'd be a general store.
In 10 years, when you're in Atlanta or something like that, you're going to say, that's where I got my start.
KU Radio.
And that's important because you don't have the venues. When I started, it was, doing inserts on the Larry King show overnight, or you'd have to, run, religious shows on Sunday.
Sure.
Or we were talking about football. It's so funny because when I was at 99.3 with Reed Kerr and Brian, I was the engineer for Friday Night Football, and I'd be responsible for putting together halftime, which was, I would say, 15 minutes of people so they could go grab a hot dog, go to the bathroom. So it'd be put together news, throw weather in, structure commercials, and just, put the playlist and go, okay, I got to talk here. Usually I'd cheat and put together the news in advance so I could just insert and go, we all get a break. Great.
You brought up that with Dave, and that shift, by the way, was that those were my first shifts at KTYO when he hired me there to do overnights. But I had that shift. You're gonna love this. I had the shift. I did midnight to 6 on Saturday.
Okay.
But it was midnight to 9 on Sunday.
That was it.
That was the one where you did midnight to 4:30. You were on the air. 4:30 to 7:30 was Casey Kasem, American Top 40, which was on vinyl. And those copies are never clean. I don't care who wants to tell you they were clean, because you'd have to, wax philosophically the whole thing with like a blowtorch. And we would roll out of Casey Kasem into Powerline, which was 30 minutes.
Brother John?
Yep.
Brother John Rivers.
Yes. And roll out of Powerline into Master Control, which was an hour. And that would get you up to 9 o'clock, which is when we would roll into Buzz A. Long.
You know what?
I worked with Buzz.
You did not.
I did. I produced his show for him when Paula Prince was on vacation. I got the opportunity to work with Buzz.
You're going to have to jot that down now.
I know.
You got to put him on the memorial show.
I do.
Oh, my gosh.
I never
need to
worked
get Paula
directly with
into-
Buzz, but
We need to get Paula in, Chuck.
yes.
Yeah, Paula may take 2 or 3 segments.
Well, I mean, Paul and I worked together at KNUE, and then when I left KNUE in 97, she was at KYKX. So I moved there, and, both of us had worked in a Don Chaney station, which was really disciplined, and we got to Kicks, and it was like, I asked her, I said, this is not that it was undisciplined. It was just, it was so
Relaxed?
It was relaxing. It was like, on Fridays, Ed Curley would just kick back. Beer would be broken out. He'd get his flip-flops, Hawaiian shirt and shorts. And it was just, and it blew my mind because I was like, it's kind of like the story where Michael Imperioli talks about, I can't say Michael's name, that Gandolfini on Sopranos got a call from some big-time mafia person in New York while doing The Sopranos, and they said, you're doing a great job. We like what you're doing. But a mafia boss, or I don't know how he phrased it, but a boss never wears shorts. Click. So that's kind of how you look. It's like, shorts, but yeah, it was so relaxing at Kicks. So relaxing.
I will tell you guys too, and kind of jumping back around to Jason Hightower. And it's sad because he doesn't get the credit that he deserves. God bless his heart and his soul. Jason was the first one to put Miranda Lambert on the air, as well as Casey Musgraves.
I believe it. I'm not surprised by that at all.
They had their, their little CDs printed out, and Miranda would, obviously she was local, came to his local station, and she would come. We had a segment, 8:45, 9 o'clock, where it was basically a double talk is what they called it, but it was where anybody could come in and talk about their public service or something they had going on in the community and stuff. But Miranda would normally come in once a month and literally just talk about her music and stuff. And then obviously she was gone. Casey had been singing at those, city Mineola fairs for a while and incredibly talented. Oh yeah.
She used to yodel?
Yeah. Don't forget the yodeling.
Yeah.
She was,
She'd probably
she was
like
awesome.
us to forget the yodeling. Yeah. She was really talented at that too.
But Casey would come in and talk and bring her music, and then she was gone. But she had it planned out. Miranda didn't. Miranda just loved entertaining and loved singing, and she really wanted to play more guitar. But Casey she already had a plan. She wanted to sing, and she wanted to go to Nashville, and she wanted to be big. So it was already all set and everything. But Jason, he never gets, you're not going to talk to those two girls and get them to tell you, yeah, K-Moo was the first one to put us on the air and play our music and stuff. So,
well, if the right person asked, they might tell us.
Well,
If we asked them point blank.
if I'm sitting in the chair right across there.
Wasn't there a small town radio station that you once went and?
Yep.
Yeah.
So anyway, there was I just threw that in there just because, Jason never would. And Hightower definitely made his imprint. This guy was going to be a politician. He wanted to be a congressman, and he needed some side work. And I had trained him on how to cue up an album at KWNS in Winsboro. He's a senior in high school, and he thought he was going to use that's my radio experience. And Jason sweat profusely, so it was awful to watch him on the air because he shook and he just sweated.
What?
He was so nervous.
Wow.
And then when he went to school at Texas A&M, he needed a job to supplement his income. So
College
he got
Station.
Yep, he got
what
a job
was,
at
KAG?
I think he was at Aggie 96 first.
Because before Chris Dyer, we got his tape and his resume, and we loved Jason Hightower, and the money was too low. He wouldn't come for, the money was too low. We wanted him. He sounded so smooth, so wonderful.
I don't think I ever knew that, Chuck.
Yeah, no. That was my next question.
Wow.
Because I was thinking, well, obviously Kenny knows this. Yeah, we wanted him so bad. I believe Michael Millsap had left. We had the afternoons open. We heard Hightower and it was like, let's get him. And then with Chris Dyer, they put him in production. And I think that's when Michael Millsap came up from KYYK in Palestine. Because there was a while there in the 90s where KYYK, and Jason eventually bought it, remember?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
They were 50,000 watts. And so they could reach the market. And there was a while here they were doing fairly progressive stuff. They were doing album cuts. And we looked at them as maybe not prime competition, but Anderson County competition. But at the time, radio was so different then because I looked at everybody's competition. Everybody.
Sure.
And our job was to, get our 20 share.
Now we're all just trying to stay friends.
I was just laughing.
No, absolutely.
I mean, I remember the early days at KYKX when
I would tell Roseanne, I said, okay, we can eat some good luncheon meat for the next 6 months because we picked up our 20 share.
Yeah.
And those are the times where, and it's not that we were arrogant about it, Kenny, because we knew that, a 20 share here was meaning we were beating everybody by 10 points. We knew it. I could listen to the station and just hear the tumblers go, liner, power gold, A, rotation, current song, somebody talks, public service stuff goes here, click, 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 click. It was like listening to a finely oiled machine. And then some people say, well, we don't like it. Like, you don't want that, but you go, yeah, because you have to have it organized. You have to, if you don't, that's where stations make their mistake. It's, I always like to say, your transmitter can blow up. Okay, that's horrible. That's awful. That puts you out of business. But if you sit there and do a lot of little things wrong on top of each other, on top of each other, on top of each other, that's where radio stations sink themselves. Oh my gosh, let me get off the pulpit. Back to you, Kenny.
Do you guys ever watch West Wing?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay.
Walk and talk.
I love West Wing.
Okay.
What about Sports Night?
Okay. Well, Sports Night
I
was
haven't watched
spectacular.
that. Okay. That's going on the list too. I got a long list over here.
Okay. Well,
Casey and Dan.
The talk radio West Wing episode.
I don't know. I'm blanking on this.
Okay. Well, they have a talk radio reception in the next room, and Sam Seaborn walks in and asks the president, are you going to join us for the talk radio thing? And he goes, do I have to or something? And the president decides to go ahead and I think CJ Craig ends up talking him into, you need to make an appearance. And
That's a
everything. And he
voice.
says, okay. And he looks over at Toby and he says, Toby, come do this radio thing with us. And he goes, oh, God, really?
I love Toby.
And they walk in.
All of these characters.
And the
Yes.
whole scene is CJ standing in front of three guys, and all they're talking about is themselves and the things about radio and where they've worked before and who they worked with and why they're not here. And where's Howard? Is Howard coming? Well, Don said that he wasn't coming if Howard was coming. And it is so reminiscent. I'm watching it, and I'm like, this is exactly what this is like. And they're just talking about themselves. And CJ's just bouncing back and forth. Okay, well, I was, what do you say? I was Craig in the morning before he was Craig in the morning. And it's like, how could you be? No, Don Imus. He goes, I was Imus in the morning before Don was. And she said, well, how does that mean? He goes, I don't know. I don't like to talk about it. She says, okay, well, I'm going to go over here now.
What's your worst moment
Yeah.
in radio? Well, I'm not talking about it.
Yep, I'm not talking about it. Okay, I wanted to ask you, I wanted to just interview you guys because I know y'all got a lot of stuff that you don't get to share a lot of times, but...
Do we need a potty break?
No,
You're good?
I don't.
Kenny, are you good?
I'm not dropping anything.
Okay, I'm just asking.
No coffee drops.
I'm good.
Which is amazing because usually by now I'd be bailing in there a couple of times.
Well, I'm on y'all's dime, and I don't know how long y'all do these things. I'm just sitting here till y'all say
You're
we're
like the
done.
longest yet,
Yes,
so
seriously, we
gotta
always
be
tell
kidding me.
people, be prepared for an hour. We'll call this the Kenny Smith Experience,
I
Kenny
love it.
Smith Marathon.
yeah, I like it.
What would you like to ask?
Yeah.
Okay. That so-called brush with, with fame, everybody always used to want to ask us is, have you ever met so-and-so? Have you ever done this? Because I flash back to when you and Larry got to meet Taylor Swift.
Yeah.
Just because at that time, she was big, but you had, who was the dang band in California you used to love?
Oh, the matches.
The Matches. God,
Kenny,
I couldn't remember who it was, man.
No, Kenny, they're doing a 20th anniversary
And you're
mini
going.
tour, and I'm going.
And you're going. Of course
I'll
you're
be
going.
in Chicago on September 28th.
Hey, they could be inmates somewhere, and you'd go see them in some type of prison.
Do you know why?
Yeah, because
they're-
you are the most loyal, loving fan ever.
But do you know why? Because they are good people. That's
Because
why.
Aaron said you could.
No, no, I'd go without Aaron. I love my husband, but I would go without. I knew these
That's
guys
fantastic.
when I was 19, when I wasn't dating anybody.
Yeah.
And they were from Alameda, California, Bay Area, which is where a lot of great punk bands have come from. And they kind of like Casey, they had a plan. They were going to be big.
Yeah.
And they had all the right elements. They were musically talented, visually, artistically talented, smart. They went to, I think, Bishop Arts High School, like 3 out of the 4 of them,
Yeah.
which is a very prestigious, like Catholic high school. Very smart, intelligent young men. Their parents, smart, established people, but these guys rolled around across the country in a Ford passenger van. It might have been a Chevy, actually. White Chevy van, the 4 of them stinking to high heaven with all their guitars and whatever. And they just did the thing.
Lived the life.
They were literally starving artists on the road, and I had so much respect because here I am following my dream, being in radio, but I'm living in Tyler, Texas, suburban, pretty easy. I don't have a whole lot of like ratings pressure that I would have had if I was in a big city. Like I wasn't taking the risks that they were taking. And I was so enamored with this idea of these very talented young men just going after their dream.
Yeah.
And they were, it was just, their live show is bananas good. I heard their album for the first time and I was like, this is okay. But then I hit play again. And it was actually in the KFRO AM studio is where I was listening to their music, primarily because the speakers were better than they were at my house.
Yeah.
And I'd crank it up and I'd listen.
Great.
And I let it repeat. And the second time I listened to it through, I was like, wait, this is really good. And I started listening to the lyrics and I started like writing them down and go, wow, like this is a turn of
So you
phrase.
had no liner notes. You had no.
Oh,
There was no lyrics on there.
There were, but I was like reading them while I was listening to it.
Okay.
I was just completely just like, wow, this is like art. Like this isn't just, punk rock music. This is
Sure.
art. And then they were, I could go like, we could do a whole show on them. They were in Silicon Valley too, like the same general area. So 2003-ish, there's this venue there called iMusicast, the first online internet video streaming. And they were doing like all kinds of crazy, like weird acts, whatever, because it was the beginning of, video streaming online.
Yeah.
Well, the matches at the time were called the Locals when they first started. That's a whole other story. But anyway, they approached the producer, the guy that owned it, and they're like, hey, can we do our own shows? And they started this thing called L3, Loud, Live, and Local. And it was teenagers in the Bay Area would come, and then they would run the concerts online. So here in East Texas,
That's cool.
I would be in the production studio at KYKX because there was a, high-speed internet and good speakers.
And you'd be watching this?
Yeah, because the shows would start at 8 o'clock in California, so it was 10 o'clock at night here. So, like, from 10 to midnight, I'd be in the production studio alone in an empty radio station.
Watching a movie.
Lights off, cranked up.
That
I'm
is
literally
awesome.
jumping in the studio along
You
with
got
all
your
the
own
kids.
concert going on?
I had my own private concert going on in the production studio. It was awesome. There's actually a documentary about them for anybody that's curious. It's called Bleeding Audio because one of their songs is titled Audio Blood.
Okay.
And it's an independent film. The bassist actually married a documentary filmmaker.
Get out.
Yeah.
Oh.
So they
Well,
did
that's
this.
a good way to do that.
Yeah, it's a really, really cool film. It was a Kickstarter campaign. I backed it.
Okay.
So I'm in the production credits as Mandee Montana.
I remember
it's
that.
neat.
That's awesome.
Yeah, they had 2 different campaigns that I helped fund because they're such neat guys. And it was at a time in music when Napster was sort of happening too. And so file sharing sort of killed, you guys remember, killed record stores.
Amen.
And so they had just been signed in 2004 by Epitaph Records, which, man, they launched all kinds of really cool bands. Epitaph's a really cool label. It's got a great history, and that's why they wanted to sign with them. Jive approached them. I mean, they could have been on the same label at the time as NSYNC and Britney Spears, but they didn't want to do it because they had punk rock roots. They wanted to be on Epitaph. But then, they didn't get the radio play to support because alternative music is alternative.
Sure.
And it was this really weird transition in music at the time that they never hit it.
Also,
And
not
so-
having big league muscle in back or big label muscle.
Yeah.
Correct, exactly. Yeah. And so the documentary examines their rise to not actually rising and the changing landscape of the music industry. And 2, they were friends with the Plain White T's, which we know from Hey There, Delilah, right?
Sure, that's it.
Yeah, so they're from Chicago. So the Matches and the Plain White T's used to tour together, and they would trade shows in San Francisco and Chicago. I know I'm getting in the
great.
weeds on this, but I saw the Plain White T's open for the Matches at the door in Dallas.
Okay.
And Tom sang Hey There, Delilah to me because there were like 12 of us at the show, like 12.
12.
I mean, it was an empty show. I mean, nobody knew who these guys were at the time. And I'm standing there and I'm wearing an OK Go t-shirt, another great band. And Tom is like standing there, like singing the acoustic song. I'm like, damn, this is a cool song. Fast forward like 6 years later, I'm working at Sunny 106.5 and the damn song is #1 for like 12 weeks. And I'm like,
How cool is that?
I got a signed CD from them back before they got signed.
Oh, that's awesome.
I need to find that actually because I do. I have the band was so cool. I hung out with them like outside the venue.
See, that's a more personal connection
Yeah.
than just going and meeting Taylor Swift and find out how
Oh, yeah.
cool and down home and
oh man,
laid back she was.
She's so professional.
Yeah.
Like just classy. And I wasn't a huge fan before. I became a fan from the 1989 album.
Yeah.
That's whenever I'm more of a pop fan than a fan of her country music. And that was the launch. That's when we met her. And I just remember being so impressed with her class, like classiest artist I think I've ever met. At that time, I hadn't interviewed Garth Brooks yet. Also extraordinarily classy on the phone. Both of them so gracious. You would have thought that I was doing them a favor. Blake Shelton, too. I met him once. He was excited to meet me. He was more excited to meet me than I was to meet him, and I was confused.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You mentioned, I think one of the things you mentioned.
I'm
is-
not trying to sound like I've met all these crazy people. I feel very blessed to have had these experiences.
We were in that, we had that opportunity at times to
Yeah.
meet and greet and go. And
Yeah.
it was your 30 seconds. But I remember you saying to me, you said, you know what? She actually looked at me while she was talking to me.
Yeah, she did.
Yeah. And that's what I remember was you mentioning
Not just me.
how personal she was. with
Everyone
making
in
connection.
the room.
Yeah.
It wasn't a meet and greet where like she was sitting at a table signing autographs. She placed us in a space that she decorated and filled with food and drinks and a photo booth. And we were all hobnobbing, hanging out.
Yeah.
And then she comes in and she worked the room.
Yeah.
She came up to each one of us. She had a photograph of herself that she, what's your name? Signed it, had a small conversation, then had a professional photographer take photos of us with her and sent us the photos later. I mean, they made us all look like $1 million.
Amen.
But that's what really great stars do, right? It's not, they don't put themselves in the center of the story. They put the fan in the center, and they make the fan feel special, and they make the fan feel like the star, and that's what makes them great.
Amen. Good story.
Sorry.
Talk about when you
I was going to say,
got
what was
drunk
the
with Ozzy
question?
Osbourne, okay?
Well, actually, I'll give you my Garth story, okay?
Yeah, you got a good Garth story, don't you?
Yeah, but back in about 95, Garth is in Shreveport, and I get a call from Jay Jensen, the Southwest record rep for Capitol. Jay wants me to go to the show. Jay and I have a history of, and I generally would get along with most record reps. Jay and I did not get along at all. It was just one of those things. As he once told, I've said, you just want me to play everything from Capitol in heavy rotation and add everything. And he said, blankety blank blank, yes, that's what I want. And I go, well, that's not what it's going to be, Jay. Yeah. And we just never got along. Guys like Ken Rush from Arista, that would be a great one to interview because he's...
Okay, I'm writing him down.
But anyway, Jay and I just didn't get along. But he had called and wanted me to go to the show in Shreveport. And I said no. And he just went insane. What are you talking? This is when Garth was, flying through the air, all that stuff, in the harness. And I just said, look, the weekend's coming up. I'm tired. It was probably a tough ratings period. I just don't want to do this.
Chuck.
And he gets angry and is screaming at me. And I finally said, okay, fine, we'll do it. So Rosanna and I go there. And I'd heard about backstage with Garth. I'd heard about how this works. So they take me back. And I'm thinking, well, it's going to be the usual green room thing, a zillion people there. Well, it's not. It's Jay Jensen, Garth's manager, Garth, me, and Rosanna. Garth said, what are you guys drinking? And I think we had a couple of sodas, a couple of Cokes. He opens them up, gives them to us. He sees Rosanna has a couple of T-shirts, Garth's T-shirts, and I think his manager's name was Bob. And he said, Bob, 2 20s, please. He gives them to Rosanna and said, your money is not good here.
Wow.
Mind blown. And he has conversation with us, and it was just, and the show, of course, was extraordinary. He was just, it was just, and the other thing was, I don't know if you've been to Shreveport, the venue, I forget the name of it at the time. It was right off Interstate 20.
It's been the CenturyTel Center for a long time.
CenturyTel.
Yeah.
It was so easy to get in and out versus the Oil Palace, which was just difficult.
That's a whole other podcast.
Yeah.
The Oil Palace.
Yeah.
Kenny, do you want to come back for that one?
Oh, my God.
Yes, today's subject, the Oil Palace urinals.
Talk about when Reba's husband got handcuffed to a light standard before she went on stage.
Oh, my. Okay. So we are going to talk about the Oil Palace on another episode. Because
and meeting Reba McEntire was like meeting the Queen.
No. Go back to Garth.
Yeah, let's finish the Garth story.
Yeah, but the Garth story, no, it was just extraordinary. He was terrific. He was wonderful. Jay and I didn't have a fist fight, and it was no, and he had told me the next week it was because normally charts would come out on Monday, Tuesday I would do music calls with Nashville and Dallas for like 4 hours, and he just said thanks a lot for coming to the show, and he was sincere about it.
That's awesome.
On the other hand, I also recognize too that, and all kidding aside, Jay just played hard.
Sure,
he played hard for his artist and for his company, and I totally get that. So.
It's easier to respect him now, right?
Yes. Oh, yeah. I'm the first. Look, I am the first
teasing.
one. No. But I'm the first one to tell you that a lot of times in our business we have situations, whether it's a company we've worked for or people we've encountered, that in hindsight you go, well, you know what? This has maybe added to my toolbox and made me better.
For sure.
So that's how I look at that. But yeah, meeting Reba McEntire is like meeting the Queen. This was like the KNUE days, especially 93 to about 97, where we had all the Oil Palace shows. And there was one in particular. It was her, Brooks and Dunn, Boot Scoot and Boogie just came out, and Sawyer Brown.
Oh, man, I bet that was dynamic, fun.
Awesome. And meeting Reba was, I mean, we got so that when the artist would come, you'd say, hi, how are you? They do liners, and, it wasn't by rote or anything. And it wasn't that we were impressed, or not that we were not impressed. It's just that as you would meet them, I'm doing my job, they're doing theirs.
Yeah.
But meeting Reba, it was like, total, and she was Reba, as you would see on TV, totally down home and lovely.
Yeah.
But that's it. That's yeah.
Great questions,
When
Kenny.
when you mentioned Garth, I said, well, I've got to share my Garth story. And I've done it on another podcast, and it probably won't be the last time that I share a Garth story.
Okay, I think it may have been 95, but I think it was later. I think it was like 98 or 99 when he came back to Shreveport, when he had that battle with Ticketmaster. And y'all may or may not remember this, but he was doing 2 shows at Shreveport.
Yes.
And I want to say it was late 90s, but it may have been those shows in 95, but I think it was later than that. But he found out that Ticketmaster did not put a limit on tickets to the corporate. So by the time tickets went open to the public in Shreveport, there was like 700 tickets left. And he found out about it.
Yes.
And he contacted Ticketmaster, and they said, hey, that's the law in Louisiana. And he said, well, I'm going to book a third night. And he said, I'm not coming for that second night. So we're going to cancel my second show, and I'm going to do a third show. And I'm going to come sell the tickets myself. And Garth came to Shreveport and sat in the damn ticket booth at the venue and sold every ticket for that third show to a customer, and filled that entire arena for that third show.
Man, Kenny, I wish I had known this when I talked to him, because I would have loved to ask him about it, and I didn't know.
I don't remember that. I don't remember.
I think it was closer to 2000 or 99 or something, but I remember he was mad. He was also mad at the venue in Shreveport because they allowed it. Evidently, they had, I guess, right of last refusal or something, but Ticketmaster ended up buying up almost all the seats for the first show, and I think half the seats for second or something. But he literally, physically, him and his people came to Shreveport, and they sold personally all of those tickets to, I think, a third show that they did.
Wow.
It went all to the public, and there was no corporate tickets sold. You had to stand in line. You had to be in that line as an individual, and you only got a limit of 4 tickets.
Wasn't Garth probably one of the first artists to go directly in a case of putting his album with Walmart? I think he was one of the first to do that, saying, I'm going to sell it right here. It's going directly to Walmart.
I think so.
And that's how you get it.
Yeah.
Well, that would sound like him.
I think it was his double live album.
Okay.
Because I bought it there.
Was it the album you bought, Randy?
Well, no, it was a CD
Or was
set.
Yeah.
Was it the CD
It was a
box set?
two disc CD set.
Yeah, with the 260-page booklet that came inside of it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
That was an incredible album, though. Like, we wore those CDs out.
Yeah.
At the time, my parents were divorced. My dad was living at Lake Fork. My mom lived in White Oak. And we had about an hour drive when my dad would pick us up on the weekends. And we would rock
just
that
put that
Garth
in?
Brooks CD. We wore it out. That and Chuck Berry, of all things. Those were the two.
That's a great mix.
Yeah.
Okay.
You done?
That would mean, ladies and gentlemen, the clap means that the interview is officially over. Thank you for listening.
And that's a wrap.
This has been another episode of The Unknown Morning Show.
I'm Mandee Montana.
And I'm Chuck McKinley.
This is our show to explore radio,
Podcasting.
Gear.
And the gearheads that use the gear.
and making money with a hot mic.
And other stuff in between.
We'd love for you to follow us on social media as well. Follow us on Facebook at The Unknown Morning Show and Instagram at The Unknown Morning Show. See us on YouTube at The Unknown Morning Show.
Thank you for listening to The Unknown Morning Show.
I'm Mandee Montana.
I'm Chuck McKinley. And remember, be kind and rewind.